Hey, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today's call-in is a special call-in. It's a Jack the Ripper call-in, and I'm glad you're all here in the chat room. I see you here. There's a bunch of you here. Let me just say who's here. Lisa S is here, Ann is here, Florence is now here. We've got, let's see who else is in here. Lisa N is here as well. Molly's here. Benny's here, and Benny's going to be on in the second part of the show. And let's see, okay, I'm scrolling through. So we're going to start out where we have Joe Stunner with us as the first part of the show. Hi, Joe. Are you there?
I am here. Hello, Pat. Hello, chat. How are you doing?
Great. Now, that's the first thing we're going to ask, just because you never know when you're doing these live call-in things, because they have to go through special technology, and I'm not really good with special technology. I'm good with technology, but just some of these are really difficult to deal with. So the first question is, can you hear us clearly, both of us about the same level? And do you hear a going through before it all drives us nuts, you know? So I think that's important. So I just want to check on that. I have the same, approximately the same settings I had last time, which went pretty well. But, what Lisa says, I'm not sure. Oh, no, that's not. Lisa just says you're great with a Pat. Are you talking about technology? You know, it's funny, Joe, because, you know, because of my quote age, there's people, you just don't know anything about technology. No, I have an iPhone. I have an iPad. I have 2 other computers, laptops. I do a YouTube show. Really, I'm not that bad. But
no, that's right. I have a YouTube channel as well, and I post videos. I mean, what else do you need to do?
Well, there you go. But the thing people don't understand is that doing YouTube is not easy. The technology you have to use with it and the things that can go wrong. That's why people have to spend so much time editing, or like me, just go with the flow and whatever the hell happens.
Yeah, well, that's it. Sometimes
like
the mistakes are the best bit.
Do you edit, Joe? Do you edit on your channel?
No, I used to write a lot of songs and record them. I've got another channel, Joe Stunner Music, and
really?
I used to do a lot. Yeah, I did that for years and years. But the boxing one is relatively new. There were already lots of boxing channels, and I thought, okay, I'll throw my 2 cents into the ring.
You should.
But all I do with that is, oh, thank you. Yeah, very good. Yeah, poet and didn't know it.
Yes, tell everybody first of all. Tell everybody your channels, because you know I always I appreciate your channel because you know we have that boxing connection. But tell the people what your channel is, because not everybody wants to do crime crap all the time, so they should have some relief. What are your channels, Joe?
Well, there were 2 channels. There's Joe Stunner Boxing, which it does what it says on the tin, which is it's a boxing channel. I just give my opinions on fights, make predictions, review and preview fights, and have discussions about the politics surrounding boxing. And then the other channel
is politics, folks. In case if you've never been around the boxing world, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah, skullduggery is the word. Yeah.
That's so
definitely.
So correct.
No, mentioning no names, Don King. Yeah, okay. So yeah.
I would throw one of my fingers up, but that would probably get me on.
We're only a couple of minutes in. Don't get yourself demonetized already. It's only 2 minutes in. But
and for all of you out there who don't know why I'd say that, Don King was one of my. He managed my brother-in-law, Simon Brown, who was a championship boxer in the United States, coming out of Jamaica. And we have stories about Don King, and they're not good ones. Yeah. So.
Well, Don King, by the way, is a psychopath, without question. If you look at his life, I mean, apart from the fact he killed 2 people,
Joe,
his manner, the way in which
we shouldn't call people a psychopath. As a criminal profiler, I would not say that. I would say he represents all the traits of a psychopath.
Okay, all right. Then he represents all the traits of a psychopath.
That way we don't get sued, you see, Joe. That's the way it works.
Oh, okay. I'm learning.
You're learning, yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Don. No, you're not a psychopath, but you do have the traits of a psychopath. So well done.
There you go.
Yeah. He
was quite a creature.
And He's 90 and counting,
Is he?
and
Wow.
yeah, he promoted a bizarre show a few months ago, but
Really?
looked like it took place in a sort of school gymnasium, but he's still going, just about.
Yeah, you know, is a fascinating character in his own horrifying way. But he did control boxing in the U.S. for mega years, and don't tell me that there's not some possibility he threw some fights.
Well, your brother-in-law was one of the best welterweights of the 90s, and was a long-term world champion at 2 weights.
Correct.
Now, he should have made a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars. I don't know whether Don King took it off him, or allegedly, or whether he just blew it.
He did make a lot of money, but yes, he somewhere along the way, that money and Don King, a whole bunch of stuff going on there, and and he is now a happy person training people, but he lives in a more modest circumstances, shall we say? Yes,
yeah. And he fought for too long. He's got defeats on his record.
It's really sad. If anybody wants to go and see the unfortunate part, if you go in and put Simon Brown in boxing, you're going to come up with the #1 video is him lying on his back boxing in the air of an unseen opponent because he got knocked in the head. But he was a brilliant boxer for many years. I spent much of the year, many times ringside. A great boxer, and no question about that. Fascinating. But anyway, go to Joe's channel if you want to learn about boxing. All right, so now since we're here with crime and not Don King,
we're back to crime.
But they go together.
Same subject.
Hey, Joe, should we do crime and Don King channel? I mean, a show on that.
Have you got a spare 12 hours? I mean, we could go on all night, couldn't we?
We could. Has anybody ever done the examination of Don King and possible criminal activities? Because he didn't he?
Yeah, wasn't
he charged with murder once and convicted?
Twice. Twice. He was a numbers runner back in the 60s, and he's a grim figure. But very intelligent.
He is, and you know my favorite story. Just before we go to Jack, my favorite story I've told before, but just makes me laugh. There's a story in my family where they're in Atlantic City, and somehow my brother-in-law, not Simon, but one of his brothers, was in the hotel room with Don King and got into it over something. And he claims he hung Don King off the balcony, threatening to drop him.
It's a shame he didn't.
Well, they're kind of equal in, shall we say, maybe personality disorders. But we were kind of like, you could have taken one for the team.
Yeah, well, but birds of a feather flock together. So he should have done that.
I think more in case their heads clashed because of how big they were. But anyway, let's go to the proper topic. Just because I don't know why we're messing around with this, but it's fun. I don't get to talk to Joe about boxing very often, but boxing can be boxing is great, but yes, unfortunately, criminality has always woven through because of who's involved in it. And it doesn't mean that the people who fought weren't great fighters and that the fights aren't magnificent to watch. There's just a lot of slimy people hanging around.
It's the black sheep of sports, and you've got the mob running it, Blinky Palermo and all that lot.
How do you think MMA is doing, Joe, compared to boxing and
MMA? Well, I'm only a casual fan, but I like the fact that they fight each other frequently and they don't duck each other. But the actual business model, I'm thinking of UFC specifically, is they don't get paid particularly well or as much as they deserve. I don't know. I'm a casual fan.
I like MMA. I just wondered about, whether anybody was getting into the little criminal clause into it.
Not yet, but it'll happen.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think it's as big as boxing. Boxing really got it big. All right, let's see how it's Reticent Robin has shown up. Hi, everyone. I don't know much about Jack the Ripper. So looking forward to this. I'm late and rewinding to the beginning. We'll be listening intently. This is kind of an interesting show if you don't know anything about Jack the Ripper, because we might not enlighten you very much. And the reason being is that Jack the Ripper is such a big issue, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about Benny and that in the later part of the show about ripperologists and all of that. So I'm not going to go there now. But it's been around so long. There's so much research done. There's so many theories that it's overwhelming. And when I did, I'm going to put the link below to the Jack the Ripper show I did. And I started out by saying I'm not going to talk about much about the whole Jack the Ripper thing. I'll send you over to Stephen Keel because he's the retired Scotland Yard guy, the detective, and he's fast. He's got a fantastic channel called Murder Academy, and he's done one video, and he did 3 hours on the victims and the whole setup of Whitechapel and each one of the victims, and then which victims he thought Jack the Ripper killed. And it's really good. And it's something I will never do because I'm lazy. And so bully for him, bully for any of the ripperologists and anybody who does all this in-depth stuff. I'm not going to do it. So I'm appreciative when they do. So I'd like to send that people to other places. But I start with, okay, this is what I think. Hope you know the history of Jack the Ripper because I don't want to go there. So yeah, this is sort of like that. So we're going to assume to some extent have a clue about Jack the Ripper. Should I do just like one paragraph on who is Jack the Ripper for anybody who really doesn't know? Okay, I'm going to go to, of course, Wikipedia because I'm lazy again. I'm a really lazy human being. I truly am. Okay, Jack the Ripper, in case you just don't know who the heck Jack the Ripper was. All right. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer active in the impoverished districts in and around Whitechapel in the East End of London in 1888. In both criminal case files and the contemporary journalistic accounts, the killer was called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. Attacks ascribed to Jack the Ripper typically involved female prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of East End London. Their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to proposals that the killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October of 1888, and numerous letters were received by media outlets and Scotland Yard from individuals purporting to be the murderer. The name Jack the Ripper originated in a letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer that was disseminated in the media. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists in an attempt to heighten interest in the story and increase their newspaper circulations. Things haven't changed much today. The From Hell letter received by George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee came with half of a preserved human kidney purportedly taken from one of the victims. The public came increasingly to believe in a single serial killer known as Jack the Ripper, mainly because of both the extraordinarily brutal nature of the murders and media coverage of the crimes. So that's the basics. And five, when you actually look at how many murders were attributed to Jack the Ripper, we're talking about 5. And that's questionable, whether those were, he did all 5 or he did 4. And people have different opinions. Like Steve Keel says he believes that he doesn't believe one of those 5 is correct, but he believes a different one than me. I don't believe that Mary Kelly was, the last one was Jack the Ripper. So we have lots of disagreements. And it's hard to prove a lot of things because, well, we're never going to prove a lot of things because it was so far back. There's no way to do it. So we're going to always have opinions and we'll push, hey, this more evidence supports this person, more evidence supports this. So we're always going to be, kind of in limbo there. But it's an interesting discussion because he was such a, well, let's face it, he's just like, when people think of serial killers, they think of Jack the Ripper as being one of the first, although he wasn't. But he was definitely made it in the media, and people were very frightened because, somebody was running around London, grabbing prostitutes and cutting them open. And of course, if we're a prostitute, you didn't have much to worry about, but still pretty darn creepy. Heidi is here also. So, all right. So Lisa and Heidi is here, and well, Lisa asked, Joe, isn't Pat wonderful to chat with both online and offline? Well, that's awfully nice to say.
She certainly is.
All right, Joe. So now to get to Joe. Mm-hmm. Joe has some great opinions and some great thoughts, and he wants to be, what was that? The devil's advocate? So Joe has some ideas where he might say, Pat, maybe I ought to rethink this. And before I ask you what you want me to rethink, and all the other stuff, I just want to point out to people that I have often been accused when in the comments on YouTube that I won't let people have an opinion that I can't stand anybody standing up to me. And I always point out, I do not have a problem with civil discourse. I do not have a problem with somebody disagreeing with me or thinking a different way. I do have an objection to people saying, Pat, you're an idiot, and then continuing on. At which point I block you. But this is one reason, in case you want to come to one of these shows, be in the chat room. I blocked my chat room to outsiders, and if you join Patreon, you can be in the chat room because this keeps our community civil, and really nice people are here. My shows are always open to the public. Everyone can be seen on YouTube. You can always comment on YouTube, but I like civility. So for the chat rooms, I have made sure that they're part of our community. So go below, click on Patreon, and join the chat room and the community. There's 8 shows a month. It's $5 a month. It supports the channel. Also, if you don't have the money or don't care about that part of it, just subscribe to the channel. It makes a big difference. All right, Joe, here we go. Mm-hmm. All right, I don't have any music.
Right. Okay.
Well, okay. What? I don't know where you want to start, but
well, you asked me if I could choose two possible candidates. So
okay.
bear in mind there are 180 whatever it is 3 people that were actually have been called suspects. Some of them are ridiculous, like Walter Sickett and the Queen's nephew, or all this rubbish.
Now wait a minute. Before we go on, I do want to say, why do you think Walter Sickett is a terrible suspect? Because Patricia Cornwell, I don't know how well her book sold, but she spent a lot of money trying to prove he was the guy. But she's a rich lady. Let's face it. I think she lives above Central Park in a condo. Am I jealous?
Well, I can sum up Walter. I can sum up her. I couldn't finish her book, to be honest with you, but I can sum it up by saying it is such a huge leap of faith, if you like, that none of it makes the remotest sense as far as evidence is concerned. She even bought one of his paintings and destroyed it, I believe.
What? Really? Oh my God.
Yes, just because she wanted to prove a point. And I just think this...
Is he rolling over in his grave going, that was art? My art.
Well, he should be.
Was he a good artist? I don't even know if Walter Sickett was a good artist.
No, he was okay. I mean, she was tying in all sorts of, like, she took a couple of his paintings, I can't remember the names of them, and said, this represents, Jack post murder, and this represents it. It's all drivel as far as I'm concerned. It's just my opinion.
That's a good point. No, it's a really good point, because here's something that people don't understand what happens. If you work hard enough, you can always find some representation in somebody's life that represents some murder thingy, right? So in the case of Black Dahlia, the guy that I forget his name, and it's not worth mentioning, but he believes his daddy killed Black Dahlia and was a police detective or something. He's a police detective, and he goes back and he comes up with the same thing, artwork that represents the murder of Black Dahlia. Mm-hmm. I'm like, really? You might as well go after Pablo Picasso, and you might as well go after. There's a million artists out there who depict really not the most pleasant things. Could one of them be a serial killer who depicted his work in art? Well, possibly, but a lot of times this is taken so out of context and taking an artistic. Artists sometimes are a little bit like, what's the word? Weird, unique. Expressive, maybe even just saying our internal being, or the beast inside us, whatever they're coming up with. They might like to express that. I might not want to buy their paintings, but it doesn't mean they're serial killers. And I think, like you say, it's a leap.
If Hieronymus Bosch had been around in Jack the Ripper's time, she'd have accused him, because his paintings are just so out there that she'd have said, "Oh, this has got to be the Ripper, because look at all this weird stuff he's done." I don't. To me, it is just fantasy. It's not based on any kind of logical, reasonable, or rational thinking. And
but what does it do? What does it do, Joe? What does it do?
Well, it sells books, and it sells.
There you go. Motive is more on her end than Walter Sickert's end.
well, it's like you were saying about Jacob Levy. You believe Jacob Levy is the most likely candidate for the Ripper, and you made a very compelling case, and I was interested in it. And regarding the things I would dispute that you said were nothing to do with Levy as the Ripper. There were certain other things, but I think, but Levy is just a regular guy. He was a butcher. He was unspectacular. It's not a very sort of sexy sexy candidate. You want, someone who's related to Queen Victoria, someone who's a famous artist, someone who was, Lewis Carroll of all. It's wonder they didn't accuse Queen Victoria of being the ripper.
Wait, I gotta stop, Joe. Are you clicking on anything?
I'm like, what? Sorry?
Are you clicking on anything?
Clicking on anything? No.
No. The heck is that? Does anybody else hear weird clicking? It almost sounds like typing. So.
No. I'm not honestly not typing. No.
What the heck? I'm trying to figure out what that is. It's really strange. I was just making sure in case, hey, we all multitask. It's like, I'm going to check this out.
It's the joys of technology again. Hang on. I wonder if it's my fan that you can hear in the background. Let me turn my fan
maybe
on.
it's like you're not sweating like me. Okay, wait a minute.
Well,
because
it's very, very hot.
Dan sent me a new fan.
They are needed. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I've turned it off now. Can you hear it? Can you hear anything now?
No. Maybe it was the fan.
I wonder if it was the fan clicking away in the background. I don't know.
Now you're going to sweat to death. Look, you're not on camera. So unlike me, who has sweat pouring down my face on camera.
If I suddenly go silent, don't take it personal. I've just fainted.
I've learned not to take anything personal, because if I did, I would not be in this business, because the amount of insults I get about literally everything about me. I'm like, people have asked me, how do you handle it? I'm like, if it's the old fire in the kitchen, you can't stand the heat in the kitchen, get out, because you're going to be attacked when you're out there in the public. So you better be able to look in the mirror and say, you are 67, you have wrinkles, because somebody's going to point that out.
Yeah.
You old hag. I was like, thanks a lot, but I'm alive. I'm alive, and some people aren't. So hey, I'm good. But yeah.
Every day,
yeah. So go ahead.
Okay. So yeah. Do you want me to go through my two clients, my two suspects? I mean, let me say to start with, look, I don't say that either of these is definitely the Ripper. I don't know who the Ripper was. And it could be someone who was we've never ever mentioned.
None of us have any idea. And none of us will be able to prove who is Jack the Ripper. I try to point this out. Right. Jacob Levy is my top suspect. But I'm not in on the case. I'm not behind the scenes. I point this out even with modern cases. I haven't seen every single thing. I haven't been working. I haven't been able to interview people. I might go back in time. Wouldn't that be cool? Go back in time, end up there. I'd probably be a frumpy, middle-aged woman prostituting myself and get killed. But other than that, I go back in time. Hopefully the police detective, but they didn't have females. But it says I'm screwed. But anyway, I could then interview people and say, it's not Jacob Levy. What the hell? It's not. Because that's what happens sometimes when you have more access. So we will always be speculating, and that's okay. So go ahead.
100%.
Number one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Number one of the two is a guy, and this is based on some research done by the late Martin Fider, who was a criminologist, and he did some work in time for the centenary of this was in 86, 87, in time for the 1988 centenary year.
Wow.
And he came up, he was the first man to actually mention this guy, and I think it's a very compelling case he put forth. The guy was called David Cohen, which was essentially a sort of Jewish Don Doe. Cohen, Cohen.
Cohen, Cohen, C-O-H-E-N.
Cohen, David Cohen.
Okay.
And he was, was not his real name. This was a sort of John Doe name for Jewish people who went to Coney Hatch Lunatic Asylum. He was a Jewish, I think he was, I can't remember what his I'm doing this from memory, but
we all have no memory, Joe, so whatever you know.
Well, it was age again, isn't it? But he was extremely violent.
We have so much in our heads because we're so brilliant. We have too many files. That's all it is.
Okay, I'll go with that. Yeah, so David Cohen, he ended up in Coney Hatch Asylum and actually died of mania in December of 1889, I think it was.
So
now,
after at least the last Ripper crash, because he couldn't commit the crime if he were already dead. So we got that.
Right. So he actually went into the asylum, Coney Hatch Asylum, and was released, I think, in May, where he was said to be cured of syphilis. And then he went back in and died.
About syphilis, isn't it? All our suspects have syphilis. Stop.
It was rife.
Wow.
So this guy was extremely violent. I mean, very, very violent. Okay. And he he was around. He was from the area. He knew the area. He may have had some sort of butcher employment as a butcher at some point. So he would have.
Do we know that he does? Do we know that he had?
It has been suggested, but confirming it. Okay, so the thing about this guy is that he is. A lot of people regard Aaron Kozminski as a good suspect, which I don't think he is, because Kozminski.
Because he's local, because he was very local, and that's about.
But he was never violent. He was never that violent. They do say that.
Correct. They say he was never violent. But hey, wait a minute. I'm gonna jump in on that.
Okay.
This is a problem with serial homicide in general. An awful lot of serial killers haven't exhibited one shred of violence in their life. They actually are considered. How far into the show are we? So I can say pussies, but they are. I gotta try not to get demonetized. I try not to. Okay, we're gonna work this out. Okay, all right. Anyway, maybe I changed something. The majority of serial killers do not exhibit violent behavior in their regular lives. They don't, because they are chicken shits. They have to go a second one. I'm working on my demonetization. Anyway, they are. Okay. So what happens is they don't like to lose. They're so wimpy, they don't like to lose. So they only pick people that they can brutalize, that they can win. That's one of the reasons. Yeah. When you take a look at female victims of serial killers, what you don't see is nobody's attacking the Amazonian woman who's jogging down the trail, but she's 180 pounds and a weightlifter. That's not who she's not being attacked. What's being attacked is the 110-pound woman, because he can beat her and he can win. He doesn't ever want to lose, because if he loses, he's embarrassed and he cannot lose. So he has to pick somebody he can ridiculously beat up on. So when you talk about Jack the Ripper, the women that were killed most of them were drunk. They were frumpy middle-aged women. So I mean, the dude had no money because he couldn't afford better. Sorry, but you know, I can't make any money right now in my life. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go on the street and say, "Hey, $200, dude." He's got legitimate. Here's 20.
You're not going to start an OnlyFans, then, Pat?
Probably not. So realistically, these women weren't charging a hell of a lot. They were out because they were out of they were trying to like get a bed for the night. They'd already drunk their bed money, so they were like, damn. So they're out at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to get a little more money so they can get a place to sleep. They did not charge a lot of money, and they weren't they were extremely unattractive women. They were pudgy. Right. Their bellies were sagging. Yeah. So the guy didn't have much money. So, and of course, I say they're not physically strong women, and they're also drunk off their butts, half of them. So easy mark. And of course, you give them the few pence that they're going to give them, and they lie. They lift up their skirts or they lie back, whatever they're doing in the dark spot, and they're so easy to attack, especially you get behind them. Okay, I won't get into the description.
No, I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? So you're done. It's very simple. So they don't want to attack somebody who they can lose to. So most serial killers actually never express any violence in their real lives. There are some, yes, that do, but that is not. Most of them, absolutely not.
Can I come back at you on that one? Because I
sure,
no problem.
And I still love you, no matter what. I'm coming to England. You're going to take me on that tour you're talking me about. So.
Absolutely, yeah. No, no, I take on board what you said. But the one thing that David Cohen and Aaron Kozminski had in common is that they were both extremely mentally ill to the point where they were suffering from absolute mania. Cohen actually died of mania in late 1889.
Why would he be a suspect? Because you're saying Kozminski. I think the reason I don't have Kozminski at the top is he's not a butcher, he's a barber. He didn't cut anybody's hair. He cut their bellies. So I truly believe the guy's a butcher. But he was also so off the charts, that I don't think he'd have the ability to do what he did. Whereas Levy wasn't quite that nutsy. I'm not saying he's stable, but he wasn't quite that nutsy. So I think he could handle things. And if you're saying that this Cohen was also off the charts, why would he be a good suspect?
because he didn't go. This look, I can't confirm this. I'm going by what I've read in different places, but Cohen was only displayed what you might call completely psychotic behavior towards the end of his life, which would have been roughly, say, late 1888, and he died a year later of mania exhaustion, or whatever they used to call it. Now, a lot of people say, well, what was his real name? Well, there is a realistic, it's a possibility that his real name was Kaminsky. Nathan Kaminsky, who is often confused with Aaron Kozminski. And according to Martin Fido, the birth date, which would between David Cohen and Nathan Kaminsky, is the same. And also, also it was mentioned. He was mentioned. I don't know whether it was Inspector Aberline or one of the leading Scotland Yard police officers. One of the not just he was a police commissioner, I think. He actually mentioned Kozminski in saying he was absolutely certain that Kozminski was the Ripper. However, Martin Fido, I think there's a chance Martin Fido's right when he says this. He said that no, he was confusing Nathan Kaminsky with Aaron Kozminski, because there was actually someone who was interviewed by the police, and he said, I definitely saw this guy. I know who he was. I saw him with so and so. I can't remember which victim it was. And he was definitely this person because I know him. And then when they asked him, well, who was it? The guy refused to. He actually gave them the information, but said, "I'm not getting up in the court because he's a fellow Jew."
But I thought but that's what they did with Jacob Levy, because a fellow butcher, whatever, he basically saw Jacob Levy was somebody and didn't want to say it was Jacob Levy. Because... Right,
and the same was done with Kaminsky, but of course when I don't know whether it was Aberline.
Problem. I mean, nobody wants to admit it. but
no. Well, how are you going to solve it? You're not going to solve it, are you? If no one talks, it's like.
But here's the problem. Your hands are tied. Okay, here's the problem again. As a profiler, here is a problem that's very realistic. People do not like to name people that they know. Because if they name them, I mean, they might be accusing an innocent human being and destroying his life. So that's a problem still today. Another issue, which is very important, which I point out, is depending on who somebody sees somebody. Let's say somebody sees somebody, person A, and they see them at 12 midnight, and the woman is found dead at 12:45. There's an assumption that was the last guy seen with her. Look, these are hookers. they're Whitechapel hookers. They're not very attractive Whitechapel hookers. Do you think if you give them, I don't know the UK stuff with the pence and all that stuff, but I may be making this up and insulting the UK. But okay, so whatever money you're giving them at the time in Whitechapel, because she's a frumpy, middle-aged, unattractive, drunk woman, is not much. You're not going to a fine hotel and hiring an escort for the night, okay?
No,
what
definitely
you're getting is 5 minutes in a dark alley or in a dark courtyard, right? So after you offer for 5 minutes, because that's all your money is, and quite frankly, it's not a comfortable situation. So she's up against a wall. I don't know what they're doing, but anyway.
They used to call them penny tremblers, knee tremblers.
Exactly. I mean, it happens still today. I mean, there are many girls on the corner who just go around the alley and the guy does whatever he does and she does whatever she does. And it takes 5 to 10 minutes. Now, so let's say the woman needs a bed for the night. It's 12 midnight. She gets some money, but it's not enough money for the bed for the night. And besides, she might want to drink it even before she gets to that bed for the night, right? In the rooming house she's in. So he's with her at 12. He's seen with her at 12 o'clock, midnight. Mm-hmm. And so it's assumed that 45 minutes later she's dead. It must have been the dude. 15 to 20 minutes later, she might be with another guy to make some more money because it only took 5 minutes in the dark shadows anyway. So she might have another 30 minutes to hook up with somebody else to get some more money. It's like, people have this concept. I don't know where they got this from. That a street prostitute, she has 1 or 2 tricks a night? No, some of them have 10, 20 a night. They move really quickly from one to the other because they can't charge $500 for a night, $1,000 for a night. They don't look that good. So, nobody wants to spend that time with them because they don't look that good. It's like, I don't even want to see your face or your body. I just want, Anyway, so I'm gonna pay you a really shabby amount of money because you're a shabby woman. So I'm gonna do 5 minutes with you because that's all I need. So she might do 3 dudes in a half an hour. So I point out that the problem with a lot of our witnesses in the Jack the Ripper thing is that people don't seem to understand prostitution. And so they have these absolute belief that, oh, this witness saw somebody, and therefore that is the somebody who did the girl in. But it's not necessarily so. So, and then they, of course, the timing factor is really questionable as well. Because let's face it, you got a guy who's out himself at 1 or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. What is he doing out there? I'm going to say probably came out of a pub. Is he drunk off his own butt? So does he even know what time it is? So there's a lot of, to be, as a profile, I look at things logically. So I'm like, okay, I actually don't know if the witnesses have any kind of realistic, they're even good as witnesses. I don't know if they saw the wrong person, if they're making up stuff, if they're drunk off their butts, if they're got the time wrong. I don't know. So I don't put a lot of, I don't put a lot of weight with that because I can't. I just can't.
And it's also worth mentioning that as far as we're talking about like how could the police solve this? I mean, fingerprinting, I think I'm right in saying, didn't come in until about 10, 15 years after the Ripper murders had stopped. Right. So there was no DNA or anything like that. Forensics were terrible. They were just wipe down the crime scene before the police even got there. They shovel the body up, put it in a cart, and then mop it down, and then they.
How much other DNA and fingerprints were in the process? So I have a question for you about the Kozminski thing, because there's some dude who wrote a book because that's what makes you the money, and claims that there's just what is it, a scarf or something that has DNA from Kozminski.
Oh, do me a favor, I know what you mean. No, a lot of old bollocks. Sorry for my language.
Well,
as we say in England, a lot of old bollocks.
I've already said 2 words that get me demonetized. I'll add bollocks to the group.
Yeah, add that to it as well. Look, I know I've read that book, and that was another book I struggled to get through because I've read about 50, 60, 70 Ripper books over the last 40 years.
Okay, wait a minute, Joe. Okay, I got to stop you right here. Are you a ripperologist?
Well, what is that? I never went to university for it, but I've read a ton of stuff. And
most other ripperologists have never been to university. It's not what it's about. If you go to what is it called, the case files, it's a great site, by the way. The case files. Obviously where I went to when I did the Mystery Files show, because I had to start somewhere to get my information, and then of course I went to things like this. But I'm not a ripperologist, and I totally admit that. Because I don't have the energy and I have too much other work to do. But I'm actually fascinated by it, because there's a lot of people who really, this is it's like a treasure hunt. And so you clearly have been actually trying to dig up that treasure. So I find it really cool and interesting. And to see where you've come after all, how many books? That's a lot.
Well, I read, first of all, I'm from London, and Jack the Ripper is part of the legend. It's part of the culture almost. Wow. And it's the granddaddy of all serial killers. Now, I've started reading about it when I was a kid, and I must have been about 10. And I've read books sort of intermittently, for over the years. So I suppose you could say I'm a ripperologist, but I don't do my own research. You won't find me at, the British Records Office going through all the microfiche or trying.
Benny and I are going to get into that later in the show, but I think most ripperologists do not do that either. I mean, they don't. I mean, you've only got so much time in your life, but a lot of people who are ripperologists read a lot of different books and look up a lot of different information that other people have come up with, and are trying to determine themselves who they think Jack the Ripper was. So I think that's it's not unusual what you're.
Well, there is, put it this way, I wouldn't say I'm obsessed, or I haven't been, but there is a photograph of me sitting on a bench right next to where Catherine Eddowes was killed.
Okay, so I have a question. If I come to London, can we go sit on the bench together?
Oh, hell yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the sites are now, you can't even get to them. I mean, one is a car park or something, and one, but the one in Mitre Square.
That's where it was. That's where I think I did during the Mystery Files. I think that was in Mitre Square. I believe it was. I just know.
I saw that.
I remember some tunneling thing, and then they gave me a what do you call it, a mannequin to work with. They threw that on the ground, and So I was like cutting up. Yeah. I get to be Jack the Ripper chopping up the mannequin, So I was like, I guess that's kind of cool.
Did you go on any of those Ripper walks? They're good fun.
No, I didn't. And I always tell this story because I feel really bad about it. Because I think it's Rumble. What's his name? Rumbelow?
Donald Rumbelow, yeah.
He does all the Ripper things, right?
Yeah. So nice guy.
If you haven't heard the story and you haven't gone clicked yet, what happened was the producers of Mystery Files called me and asked me to come to Rumbelow had a theory about he was one of the guys that owned one of the rooming houses, and he talked to one of the victims before she went out and then got killed, and he believed he was Jack the Ripper. And so they called me up and they said, Pat, he's done he comes up after all these, he's a ripperologist, he's done all these talks and walks, and he's like gives all these tours, and he's come up with this great suspect. And I'm like, and I actually am not a ripperologist at all. And I'm like, I don't know anything about it. Things are buzzing again. Get on to fixing. I really didn't spend that much time with Jack the Ripper in my lifetime. So I'm like, okay, well, look it up, because they wanted a criminal profiler to profile and essentially back up his theory. And so what happened was I started reading about Jack the Ripper, did all my basics, and came back and said, I'm sorry, I just can't support it. Because the dude he's picking out, who owns the rooming house, very personable guy, gets along with women well, is making money. I'm like, this guy's not the guy. It's just not. Yeah. And I was like, I'd love to be on your show, but I cannot profile in a way that I don't believe is correct. So they asked me, well, who do you think is Jack the Ripper? So I came back with Jacob Levy. And then they dumped Rumbelow as the host of the show, and they brought me in.
Oh, God.
And I felt really kind of shitty about that, because I know he probably was really excited. He finally got a show. And I thought, wow, that sucks, because, I've done shows before. It's not that important to me. But on the other hand, I couldn't support his victim. He ended up on the show saying certain things, but I'm sure he was. I always feel like I want to take him out for a drink, because I'm like, dude, I didn't mean to do this to you. I felt really shabby about it. And then the second funny thing about it was that I had just come back I've been doing Cleopatra, and I had a production team I went to Egypt with. And they're from the UK, and they treated me like dirt for an entire month of shooting. It was the worst production team I've ever worked with. Great show, mind you. The show was fabulous. They were good at their job, but they were not nice people, and they left me alone and never went to dinner with me. I was in Egypt. I couldn't go out as a female. They wouldn't go any place with me. They left me alone and went out with their friends. It was miserable. I can't tell you how much a miserable time I had with these human beings. So when this other UK production team called me up, said, we want you to do the Cleopatra thing. I said, my last experience wasn't good with Cleopatra. They went, oh, those people. You're right, they suck. So I got to London. They met me immediately. Then we went out to a pub. We had a great time. We went to a rave. We had such a great time. Absolutely. It was fabulous. They were wonderful people. But it was really, really good. So, it's kind of funny how things go like that. So anyway.
Yeah, we're not bad. We're not bad people. Most of us aren't.
I've done 3 different shows with you. I've done another Cleopatra show with UK as well. That went well as well. So I've had 2 great experiences. And, American producers aren't so great either, because I just got dumped off a show. And I'm like, they called me, we want you to do the show. And then they're like, and I'm like, are you going to let me know when the show is? And then they just never respond. And then I've just found out the show is coming out next week. I'm like, thanks a lot. So
it's just plain rude.
It's TV.
It's just plain rude.
It's TV. Some people.
I think TV producers regard their guests, if that's the word, or the people that participate as being like bits of furniture. They don't really see you as people. Just sort of move you around to where they want you. And once they're done, they're done.
They call us talent. We're in front of the camera, and we're considered. I think we're considered prostitutes. I swear to God, we are treated like dirt. But I've had some fabulous producers. I had another one in New York, and on a serial killer show I did, and that company was also great. We had a fabulous time together. We went out to dinner. We spent an evening together. We had such a nice time. And I'm like, when you're going out of town to do shows, or across the globe to do shows, you at least want people to be decent to you, and like, include me. Like, I don't want to eat dinner alone for a month. You're paying me shit, because most of us don't get paid shit for me. I got $5,000 of Cleopatra for an entire month's worth of work. Believe me.
Oh, wow.
I did get to go to Egypt and Italy and England, but still, yeah. Anyway, but I got treated really well by 2 different UK shows, another Cleopatra show and the Jack the Ripper show. Fabulous. But so it was funny because I felt really bad about this one guy. I'm like, Jesus, this sucks, but I can't agree with him. I just cannot. And so he did do a little piece of the show, the Mystery Files, and I did the majority of the show as the host of the show, essentially, and profiling the show. And I got to like cut people's throats in the middle of Mitre Square.
But you see, I thought your show on Levy was, convincing. I mean, I didn't hear a lot that I don't know. That I was, disagreeing
about my
with.
YouTube show or my Mystery Files show?
The YouTube one. I have seen the Mystery Files one.
Mystery Files is very watered down.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. I don't think they gave you enough time to really go into it properly.
They never do.
But
they never do.
No.
I
know some of those TV appearances you did on shows. They give you 90 seconds. Well, what can you say in 90 seconds? It's a soundbite.
Well, it's worse than that. If you're doing an actual documentary, a lot of times they just cut everything you're saying, so that you end up saying stupid stuff. It's like you could say something like, "It could be a serial killer, but it is unlikely." And then they cut out the unlikely part, and they just say, it could be a serial killer. And like, no, it's not what I meant, But so actually somebody said, and I'm going to go on with that later with Benny, made a comment that some of the stuff in the show was factually incorrect. And that's true, but I didn't say that. That's what the show said, because they had their own, producers and researchers, and I was chucked in. And you never know what the result is going to be, so... But it's a frustrating thing. But I'd be happy to still go to Mitre Square with you. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, we'll do our own. We'll do our own show.
We could do that.
Nowadays, everyone's got a video on their camera. But we can do our own little documentary, can't we?
I'm going to lose weight before I do that, then.
Hey, you and me both.
Okay, so we'll start now. I'll be there next year. I'm thinking I'm coming either in the spring or the summer. We'll work it out. I'll show up. I'm going to stay with my daughter's friends for a while. I'll come to London, and then we'll have our time, and we'll do a show. We will. Why not? Wouldn't that
definitely.
Be fun? Yeah.
That'd be a laugh. Yeah. I'm up for that.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
So go on with your fellow, this Cohen. Do you think he's Kozminski, or do you think he's not Kozminski?
He's not. No, I think he's not. Definitely not Aaron Kozminski. He might be Kaminsky. Nathan Kaminsky, yes, I think there's a realistic chance. Obviously, I don't know, but both were violent people, and they, I think I'm right in saying they didn't go into Coney Hatch until sort of late 1888, but I'm not 100% certain about that.
What kind of a violent person are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. How long have you got? I mean, he was, put it this way, if you compare him to Kozminski, who would eat sort of junk out the gutters and talk to himself and, shout to no one in particular in measuring people.
That's why I think Kozminski, I put him low. I put him as a possible suspect, lower than Levy, but that's the problem. He doesn't seem to function in real life. Yeah. No,
he couldn't. No, he couldn't have done it. But Kaminsky had more of although he was Kaminsky, K-A. Minsky. Nathan is his first name. He was violent in the sense that he would target people and
like how?
Well, let me think now. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm doing this entirely on memory.
You can now type into the. This is what I do during shows all the time. I'm always typing into the.
No, I'm not going to do that. That's cheating.
No, I cheat. Joe, I cheat constantly. And it's because, and I say this all the time. This is a live show. I don't edit, and I can't remember all the crap that I need to remember because there's so much information out there that you just can't retain it all. So it's too many files in the head. It's not an age issue. Although the other day I could not remember the word saliva, so I started doing this little thing on John Benet's DNA. I went, it's not semen, it's not blood, and it's not.
Well,
and I couldn't come up with it. I'm like. Drool. I said drool. And then I went, saliva.
I think I heard that one. Yeah, I remember you saying that. Right. I thought, okay, drool's good,
Right. And that was my second go through because I hate I hate doing non-live shows. I don't know. It's weird.
Right.
It's like it can't be normal. So occasionally I do a video. It's just a video for reasons that are, I have other reasons for doing just straight videos, but I don't like doing them. And you know, Stephen Cale says the same thing. He says, I feel like I'm stiff when I do this. I can't like relax. And so when you screw up, it says I don't do editing. Once you screw up, I can't just joke about it, you know, because I'm in the middle of a non-live show. So I'm like, so it would be semen, blood, or like long sounds. I could not come with saliva to save my life.
But, well, that's close enough.
Well, then I got saliva a little later, and so I'm like, yeah, okay. So I finally got it, but I'm like, I don't feel like you're doing this video, so I'm just gonna go with it. But I mean,
it's like when I make my videos, I think, you know, there's something like it's a name I've known for the last 40 years, and I just can't think of it. And it must just be a senior moment,
no,
you know,
it's
where
not
you just
a
think, oh my God.
Stop it, Joe. It's not a senior moment. This is what annoys the shit out of me. I swear to God. So what happens is I'm looking around my house going, where did I put my phone? And my kids say, 2 seconds later, they're like, where did I put my car keys? I'm like, so the fact is, when younger people misplace things, they don't think of it as a big deal. But when older people do, they go, see. I'm like, okay, so I say, I can't remember the name of that movie. And they're like, and then they go, and there's that actor. And we're not supposed to notice that, you see. So young people, I've noticed, do it just as much. So the difference simply is, hey, they're only 20 or 40 or whatever they are. You got years on them. You got that many more files. So excuse me. I mean, I do a tremendous amount of casework, a tremendous amount of research, a tremendous amount of videos. Sometimes I can't remember the name of the video I'm doing because there's so much information coming in. So unless you get to the point where it's clearly Alzheimer's, shut up.
Oh, I'm not going to disagree with that. That's good.
Very good. You're fine, Joe. You're just fine. So, but I use, that's why I sometimes go, that's why I don't call it cheating. I'm like, I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to put in this. And what was his name again? You said
Kozminski.
Well, okay, Kozminski. Wait a minute. Aaron, wait a minute. What's his first name? It's supposed to be
Nathan. Nath.
Oh, Nathan. Okay, Nathan.
Nathan. Kozminski.
Here he is. Komoskin. They say Komoskin. Wait a minute. That's a young dude who just died over there. No. That's not the dude.
Kamin.
Kamin. Oh, there he is, Jack the Ripper. Okay, let's find out about this dude, David Cohen.
Well, he was, from what I remember, you've got it out there, but look, from what I remember, he attacked random people. He was fond of knives. He was often, verbally aggressive as well as physically aggressive.
Random people, they're all female?
Yeah, well, passers by in the street and.
Okay, hold on one sec. Okay, who was David Cohen? The theory that was put together, pinning the chilling Whitechapel murders on one David Cohen, claims that this name was actually the John Doe identity given to him at the time. He was taken in when found stumbling through the streets of East End London in December 1988. I'm sorry, 1888. He's still around.
Yep.
Damn. A few months short of after the Autumn of Terror. It is claimed that Cohen's real name was Nathan Kozminski, a Polish Jew who matched the description of the wanted man known as Leather Apron, who would later form the pseudonym of Jack the Ripper. All right, Kozminski. Now this is the issue part. Cohen, born in 1865, was not actually named as a potential suspect in the Jack the Ripper case until Martin Fido's book, The Crimes, Detection, and Death of Jack the Ripper, was published in 1987, almost 100 years later. The book detailed Cohen's alleged erratic and violent behavior, which made him a good fit for the profiles of Jack the Ripper. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah.
As per a 1985 article, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Leading Anderson to write, in quotes, the only person I ever had a good view of the murderer unhesitatingly identified the suspect the instant he was confronted with him, but refused to give evidence against him. That's his claim. Mistaken identity. Was David Cohen's real name Nathan Kozminski? That's considered to be his real name. What about the witness? Supposedly Joseph Lewende. Oh, I remember him. Okay, during the investigation of the murder of Catherine Edos, is believed to have correctly identified Kozminski, not Kozminski, adding more weight to the theory. Was David Cohen, Nathan Kozminski, the real Jack the Ripper? Okay. This one. We will likely never know the answer to questions, but you can make your own mind by taking a Jack the Ripper tour with one of your favorite expert ripperologists. I like the way they did that. Like, help support ripperologists and their tours. So I was just trying to find out. Okay, Nathan Kozminski. Let me go to the casebook files just for a second here, because they are at least casebook files. I want to point out the casebook files is where I found some of my original information, because I go through each one of the suspects, and again, this book and other stuff. Some people have asked why I never pointed out during my show with the mystery files. Did I get my information from someplace else, like the basics? And it's a television show, you get edited to death, so you don't, you're not going to get to say that in the show.
Yeah.
If I were writing a book, yes, I would point out the casebook files. I point out this or any other place I got information, and we'll be talking about that with Benny later on about the new book out. That interestingly, tons of research, but I was not part of where she got some of her information from. Anyway, here it says. Anyway, I'm throwing shade. Yes, I am. Okay, Nathan Kozminski was born in 1865. Was a Jewish bootmaker. Interesting. They claim he's a bootmaker here, who resided at 15 Black Lion Yard. Diagnosed as suffering from syphilis, he was treated at Whitechapel Workhouse Infirmary and was discharged as cured 6 weeks later. Probably not, but hey, they lied to him.
It wasn't.
Yeah. Dude, you're fine. Go out and have some more sex.
No.
Get some syphilis to some more prostitutes. Okay. Author Martin Fido in his, I don't know if is it Fido like the dog, Arf, or is it Fido?
Fido, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. In the book, The Crimes, Detection, and Death of Jack the Ripper suggests that Kozminski was in fact the real Leather Apron, and that John Pizer was identified in error. Yeah. This hypothesis is based on the fact that Kozminski's age, race, and occupation are identical to David Cohen, and therefore they must be one and the same. Fido suggests that following the hunt for Leather Apron, Kozminski changed his name and occupation prior to his attack of raving mania. Therefore, when he was arrested, it was under the incorrect name of David Cohen. That's a lot of speculation. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Fido surmises that Kozminski was the real second suspect known in the McNaughton Memoranda, and that the name Kozminski was used in error. Little is known about what precisely happened to Kozminski, and he appears to have simply vanished from the face of the earth. If Kozminski was therefore Cohen, why were the police still on Ripper alert after Cohen's death? And here's my problem with that suspect. It's not that he's not a reasonable suspect, but there's nothing absolutely that makes him a suspect outside the supposed one witness. And again, as I say, most witnesses are crap. I mean, they're crap today too. I mean, it's weird because I have a different opinion with Stephen Keel about this, because he usually says that witnesses are crap, but when it comes down to Mary Kelly and the jackass that was outside stalking her, what's his name? See, I forgot. Okay, ripperologist, dude. The guy outside with the guy that gave the description.
Oh, well, you're Pat. You're stealing my thunder. You're talking about George Hutchinson, aren't you?
Thank you, George Hutchinson. Okay,
right. So we'll get to him later. Trust me.
Okay, so George Hutchinson is outside, and he claims to have seen the guy with Mary Kelly, although he's stalking the crap out of Mary Kelly, and he's like, George, he's up in this guy's face, and he identifies all these incredible particular things about him, and then he goes in with Mary Kelly into the residence. And George Hutchinson stands outside for 45 minutes like a true stalker, or some people say a pimp, but I don't know which one. Anyway, and it's interesting because although Stephen Keel says, hey, witnesses, generally speaking, can be shit, this guy's perfect. This guy, we're going to believe this guy. I'm like, why would you believe this guy? Why? Why is this guy better than the other witnesses? Yeah. He could be lying. He could be all kinds of reasons. So witnesses are always kind of questionable. So if everything is based on one witness, I'm not convinced, shall we say. Interesting.
Okay.
I'm convinced. What's about George Hutchinson?
By the way, I'm not. When you say you're not convinced, I'm not convinced by anything. But yes, you're quite right. Okay. I'll take that.
Tell me about George Hutchinson. What's your ideas on that?
Sorry, my ideas on what?
George Hutchinson.
Oh well, he was my second suspect. You've jumped the gun, yeah.
Already
moving
Cool.
on to George.
All right.
Now, again, you've said a lot of what I was going to say in a sort of potted way, but George Hutchinson, right? For those that don't know, he knew Mary Jane Kelly. We'll get to the business of whether Mary Jane Kelly was a Ripper victim or not. I know you don't think she was. I think she was.
Okay.
But you don't.
Which is why you think George Hutchinson could be the guy who was Jack the Ripper.
If she wasn't a Ripper killer, Ripper victim, sorry, that casts doubts on whether Hutchinson was the Ripper. But I think she probably was. The one I had doubts about was Liz Stride, long Liz. But anyway, George Hutchinson, he was Mary Kelly was killed on, if memory serves, the 9th or the 8th or the 9th of December. Or the early hours of the 9th, probably. Hutchinson came forward on the 12th and said, well, yeah, I saw Mary outside. I know the girl. She was with some guy. He described him down to his eyelashes, what type of eyelashes he had. I mean, you want to talk about unreliable witnesses. This guy was, and this was dark, by the way.
Correct. He didn't say he put his head up like in between the two of them.
He said, if you read the statement, he said that the guy walked past him and he was shorter than him, and Hutchinson looked at him and the guy looked from under his hat. Right. And that's how he identified his eyelashes. But he gave a description that was just down to the absolute minutiae of what the guy was looking like. Right. He then, as you said, he was standing outside Mary Kelly's room that she went in with this guy, this unidentified person. Now, the theory is that Hutchinson, if he was the Ripper, again, a big if, but if he was the Ripper, he got cold feet a few days later and made this statement because he was scared that he would have been seen. It was all over the papers. And he basically got jittery and felt he had to come forward to remove himself from any sort of future suspicion. Because he did know Mary Jane Kelly. And he as you put it, he stalked her. Essentially, he had a thing about her, didn't he? But,
now, see, I just want to jump in here. Just put this in. You can keep going after this. I also think that the reason he gave this phony description was because he felt that he would be accused of what had happened. However, I believe it's because he did kill Mary Jane Kelly, but he's not Jack the Ripper. So he's trying to make it look like Jack the Ripper because I just don't see it. The guy who got women in alleys, who was with them for 5 minutes, that kind of guy, I just don't see him as the kind of guy who's doing inside crime to the level that he was doing with Mary Kelly. Now, I could be wrong about that. There could be the people say it's this one big chance because he's inside. I don't also think that he's as kind of a grubby, creepy little character of the streets that he is. I don't see him going there and trying to talk the police out of it. I don't think he had that kind of contact with police. I don't think he had the confidence. But I do think somebody who killed Mary Kelly because he was a stalker would go to the police to try to take the anybody who possibly could have seen me. No, it was Jack the Ripper. This is why I believe the stuff that happened to Mary Kelly was so extreme that people think it's his final thing. But I think it may just be he was overdoing it because once he killed Mary Kelly, he's like, oh, crap, I'm going to look like I killed Mary Kelly. Somebody might have seen me. I've been stalking her. They know I know her. Let me make it look like Jack the Ripper. Okay, go ahead.
Right. What I would say to that is that Mary Kelly was obliterated. I mean, she was just ripped to bits. Okay, and that there are a couple of photos that you've got to have a hard stomach to look at them even now. But I think that if you take that idea that he wanted to make it look like Jack the Ripper, he would have. He may have cut into her, he may have done some damage to her, but I have doubts whether he would have absolutely shredded her to bits, which is what happened. I think that's the sign of someone who is, who isn't just trying to stage a crime, but is actually very much into it, into the actual destruction of another human being, especially the facial stuff as well, which is interesting. And I think there's also that one of the other victims had facial.
Yeah, that's the one I think is accidental. A lot of people disagree with me with that, but I don't find that he actually tried to cut her face. I believe he was trying to cut her throat. She moved, and he ended up doing that. That I said that in the mystery files.
Yeah,
I don't believe that was. I don't think he had any interest in anything above the waist. That's why I have a problem with the Mary Kelly thing. He was totally focused on the internal organs below the waist. He wasn't interested in the heart. He wasn't interested in the face. He wasn't interested in any of that. But the obliteration of Mary Kelly, I think your point is good. So I'm going to recognize that entirely. That could a guy who was trying to fake it stage it to this extent? That's a good question.
Yes.
And I think that's rational and reasonable. On the other hand, I don't think Jack the Ripper was ever interested in anything about the waist. So I don't think he had a reason to obliterate her face and take her heart and all this other stuff. So, but in a lot of times, obliteration of the face is actually not somebody who doesn't know the person. It's somebody who hates the person. Like, you're a total, and you went with other men, and I'm going to take away. And on top of that, you had my heart. You took my heart. I'll take your heart.
Yeah.
See, I see too much things that, to me, can be the kind of stalkerish things. He might be imitating Jack the Ripper to try to make it look that way, but in the process, he's also putting forth his own viewpoints on what she meant to him and what she was willing to do to him and why he had to take care of her and why he had to do these things to her. So I see a lot of a mix of fake Jack the Ripper and this is my own thing. So I think the facial obliteration and the taking of the heart, I think that's a stalker thing. I don't think that's a Jack the Ripper thing. Maybe I never made that clear enough. But, and of course, again, your point is reasonable. So, you know.
But can I just say about Edo's, because you're saying about the facial damage to her. Look, I actually think he was trying to do something to her face. She has two V. A piece of her nose was missing, and she has two V-shaped cuts into her cheek, quite deep cuts into her cheeks. I think he wanted to remove her face because he knew her, and for some of the reasons you gave as well. Okay. But he just didn't have the time, because don't forget, she was the one where he actually took parts from her.
Right. You have a lot of people on your side on that. I just want to point that out. A lot of people on your side. I think the two things I've said that people disagree with heavily is the Edo's thing and the face, and the Mary Kelly. I don't believe it's Jack the Ripper. A lot of people do not agree with me on those two things. And I've given reasonable reasons for that. Having studied homicides, I tend to stay with my belief on that, because a lot of things that happen, this is where I have an issue with sometimes people doing research who aren't familiar with homicides and how homicides go, will often not understand bizarre stuff happens during the commission of a crime under extreme circumstances. Things just go wrong. And because things go wrong, the knife can do weird things, and then it can look like something it is not. And so, you're in the middle of an alley. Was he really into destroying Edo's face, or was he just trying to control the woman, and that's where the knife went? So I tend to think that I don't see that at that point in time he had any reason to be doing that necessarily. So I disagree. I think it is very possible this is just something gone wrong. But again, you can't prove what happened at that moment in time. So, I wish we could. I wish we could go back and say, this is clearly this, but we can't. So that's why we end up with differing viewpoints. So Hutchinson, if he were Jack the Ripper, then he would, then it would be escalating. The claim of escalation would be that not only
100%.
That he then did her face, and then he did Mary Kelly and went further.
Yeah.
I like your idea of Hutchinson. I like Hutchinson better than the other possibilities. The only problem I have is I don't believe for a minute. This is where I have the problem. I just don't think you go to the police and give this. I don't think he's that shrewd. And Hutchinson has no history of butchering. So I really truly believe whoever killed all these women had a butcher background. I just believe that very strongly. And also, I would
agree, but we don't know much about Hutchinson. Hutchinson is very much a mystery man, and this is why. But
nobody knows him as a butcher either. So no. So where did he get this? Because what happens in the real life is sort of serial killers and so on and so forth. This is what I also point out as a profile. Whatever you do on the scene is something you would do in real life. But what I mean by that is this. I am not a careful person. I mean, no, sorry, take it back. I'm not careful. I'm careful, but I'm not neat.
Okay.
Neat, okay? If you see a scene where everything is done neatly, it ain't me. Because one of the questions I asked in some of my classes on homicide, I said, okay, pretend you're a serial killer. Would you jump out on a bike path and stab somebody to death and rape them? Or would you abduct them and bring them to your basement, tie them up and torture them? Which one would it be? And all my people go, whoa, you're asking us that horrible question? I'm like, yeah, I am. Because I know exactly who I am. I always said, I'm the one who jumps out on the bike path and stabs you to death. I'm good with that. Because I don't have a lot of patience, and I can't do this. I got to abduct. I got to be really nice. I got to use some kind of nice, sweet talk and abduct you. I got to be charismatic. Then I got to bring you to my damn basement. I got to have ropes and crap. I got to tie you. I got to plan a dungeon. I don't have the energy for this. I've always said I don't have the energy for this crap. I'm not going to sit there and pick on you forever. It's annoying to me. I'm not going to do that. If I'm pissed off and I want to have power and control, I'm going to jump out. I'm going to stab the living crap out of you. I'm going to be done with it in 5 minutes. I'm going to be gone. So that, if anybody looks at a crime scene and then says, okay, this person did this, would it be Pat Brown or would it be somebody else? Well, look at their lifestyle. The people who were like bombers, like the Boston bomber guy, he made bombs. He had a very meticulous life. You don't have two different lifestyles. So that's the thing, is that when you cross the lifestyles, I think of Jack the Ripper as somebody who is crawling around the streets. He's a very low-level fella. He goes for 5 minutes of work. Doesn't have that much. He doesn't have a great way of speaking to the police. He probably doesn't want anything to do with the damn police. I cannot suddenly see him doing Mary Kelly inside and then going to the police and faking it. That's me. I can't see the two. That's a disparity.
But Pat, you say that you believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. You say you believe Hutchinson killed Mary Kelly, correct?
I don't say I believe it.
Or you think there's a chance? Well, no. Sorry, that you're right. You feel there's a realistic chance that he. Because none of us know anything, but you know.
Because he gave a ridiculous description, which I don't believe. And he was a stalker, a very big stalker. I believe that it was a personal crime against Mary Kelly, and he is the likeliest suspect for a personal crime. And that he would do something. We don't know. Again, as you say, we don't know much about this dude. I don't know much about the rest of his life, but I do know he's a stalker. Stalkers can get really weird. But he obviously is very effusive, right? By giving us description, so that he would go to the place and think he could pull that over on them. I would believe, but the guy I consider Jack the Ripper, I don't think he's got the ability to go to the police and be so effusive. And that's one of the things that I could disagree with Stephen Keel about. He's like, he thinks Jack the Ripper is smooth and is able to lure women. I'm like, you don't lure women. You just give them a couple pence and you go in a back alley. You're not luring anybody. I mean, it's easy as crap at 2 o'clock in the morning with a drunk prostitute. You're not luring anybody. She'll go with literally anybody who isn't like the knife.
Do you think there's someone who would do that to another human being, to absolutely destroy it a bit, rip it to shreds, would then go to the police?
If he believed that he was seen standing outside a place for 45 minutes, that the guy leaving the place may have seen him, that the guy going into the place may have seen him. Do I believe he possibly, because he's a stalker sort? Yeah. I mean, these are all speculation things, but I believe that more than I believe he's Jack the Ripper. So.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I see your point, but I can't put that guy as. I can't match those crimes. I just can't, and that's why the argument was going to go on and on and on.
Do you think that? Do you think there's a chance that, or do you believe in the idea that the Ripper escalated because this is something I believe that this, like I said about the Eddowes thing with the face and everything, and then the Mary Kelly thing, that this was his sort of Sistine Chapel, this restoration of Kelly.
Here's the problem with that. there's a mythology that everything has to escalate, and that's not true.
Mm.
I've seen serial killers go from killing to go back to raping and stop killing.
Mm.
I've seen it all depends on circumstances. Do you have, under what situation are they? Obviously, there's an issue of, yes, the escalation has a point because you get bored with what you're doing and want more. It's kind of like sex for people,
Yes, it is. No,
you start out kissing the girl and then you want more than kissing
You're
the girl.
right. You're
until
right.
you keep
You're
going
right.
up. Right. There's a truth to that, but there's also a point where that's not their interest. And the question is here, was this really his interest? The level that they think he escalated to, was it really his interest? And I don't know that it is. And so just because it seems like it could be an escalation doesn't mean it is an escalation. That's the problem.
Okay.
And Jack, if George Hutchinson is telling the truth, okay, about who goes in, that guy does not seem to be Jack the Ripper to me at all. So I'm more inclined, rather than thinking the guy who went in the place is Jack the Ripper, I'm more inclined to go with you. I would in that. That if I had to pick between,
I didn't do it.
If I had to pick between Mary Kelly's John, right, and the dude standing outside saying this is what the John looked like, I'd go with George Hutchinson first. I definitely would. So I'm with you there because I just don't believe for a minute that. Here's the thing: I don't believe for a minute. If Jack the Ripper were the trick for Mary Kelly, think about this. You're walking to the place with Mary Kelly. You're all spiffy. Which, first of all, I don't think Jack the Ripper was a spiffy dude in any way, shape, or form. I don't think he has any charisma whatsoever. I think he's a low-level dude. Okay, so you have a guy who's very spiffy, chit-chatting with Mary Kelly, going up to her place, very slowly apparently, and talking and da. And then George Hutchinson follows them, and he's in the dude's face, checking him out. If you're Jack the Ripper and somebody's just checked you out to that level, the last thing you're going to do is kill that girl when you go inside the place. You're going to walk back out again. You're not going to kill her because it's stupid. You've been recognized. The guy is in your face. He knows Mary Kelly. He's looking at you. You're not going to take the chance. I mean, even Jack the Ripper's not that stupid. If you've been identified to that level, you're probably not really going to commit the crime. So, especially when you've got a guy who probably knows Mary Kelly. So I don't believe the guy who went in with her was Jack the Ripper. I can take that one right off the table. Absolutely don't believe it. So you're either correct that it was George Hutchinson who did it because he's lying about anybody else being with her, or George Hutchinson. Yeah. Well, again, I personally believe George Hutchinson did kill her. I take that back. I believe George Hutchinson killed Mary Kelly. That's my top suspect for Mary Kelly. I just don't know that he's Jack the Ripper. That's the difference.
You see, where I can't join the dots. And look, let's be honest here. We're all talking about, okay, none of us know, but if I put a gun to your head, what do you think? Well, I think that if somebody can do that to Mary Kelly,
put a gun to my head, do I get paid?
You're putting a gun. Well, I don't know what to say to that. But if someone can do that to Mary Kelly, that's not a one-off. All right. So I think it was an escalation thing, and I think the fact that
because if he killed Mary Kelly in a rage, and at that point he's like, "Oh shoot, I'm the last guy seen with Mary Kelly. People are going to think I did it. I know Mary Kelly. I've killed Mary Kelly. I should stage this." So you're saying it could be a stage. It's had to be an escalation. So what you're going for?
Well, I don't think it was a staging myself, but having. Well, I think one thing. Some wag once said, "Well, we can rule out suicide," which I think is accurate, but that's about the only thing we can rule out. But I don't see somebody.
Wait, Joe. We cannot rule out suicide.
You can't. Okay. Well, she
Mary
paid someone
Kelly
to do
could
that
have
to her.
stabbed herself or cut her own throat, and then the dude's like, "Dang it, Mary! Now you're gonna make me look bad," And it goes on.
Have you been talking to Patricia Cornwall by any chance?
Maybe. I want to be invited to her beautiful condo over,
Exactly. No, look, I just think that it's a gut instinct thing, and I could be completely wrong. But I think if Hutchinson did that to Mary Kelly, I would think that it probably fits in, if you imagine that sort of that axis thing, where it is an escalation thing, and he finally had a chance to do his sort of great coup de grace.
What happened to Hutchinson after the fact?
Well, we don't. This is it. We don't know because he disappeared.
Yeah.
We just there's I haven't got time to go into it because obviously Benny was come on.
I'm going to give you credit, Joe. Again, I believe Hutchinson killed Mary Kelly. I don't necessarily believe Hutchinson is Jack the Ripper, but I get where you're coming from, that he could be Jack the Ripper. So I think I'm pleased to think that somebody else thinks that George Hutchinson is not an innocent dude, because a lot of people.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Well, I think there's put it this way: if I was in charge of the investigation, Cohen or Kozminski, whatever his name is, and Hutchinson would definitely be two of my top 4 or 5 that I'd want to have a long old chat with. Invite them in for a nice cup of tea.
Can we conduct an investigation together? I think we should do that.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you what. Let's get Donald Rumbelow in for old time's sake as well.
I will. Okay, I'm going to make a deal. Okay, because I'm going to go. I have to let Benny come in because he's been waiting on the side.
Yeah. Sorry to keep you waiting, Benny. Sorry, mate.
Right. Well, I think I should come to London. We'll get together. We'll call Rumbelow and say, sorry about that. We'll buy you a drink and we'll all go to the pub together. I think this is going to be fun. Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
And by next year, we'll do some more studies, and by next year we'll have some more things to talk about for Jack the Ripper. I think this is gonna be super.
Yeah, it's gonna be a laugh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. Yeah. This has been fantastic talking with you, Joe. You're just the best. And I totally appreciate where you're coming from. I really do. I don't say that I'm correct as a profiler. What you do as a profiler, which should be the way it works, is I would work with the police department. And I would analyze things and tell them why I think the evidence supports certain things and why they should look in certain directions. But I would also say, hey, somebody came along. I don't know. His name is Joe. He had this idea about Hutchinson, which I think you should look into. That's the way I would do it, because the worst thing is believing you're 100% right, because you could be not 100% right, and the other person could actually be onto something. So what you want a police department to do is focus most on the most likely things, but then also say, hey, there's other things that could be true as well, because there's good explanation. So let's look at that as well. Now, of course, we don't want to look at aliens. We don't want to look at these retarded theories. The retarded theories of Cornwell, with Sicker. We don't. We want to get rid of the prince. Let's get rid of all these ridiculous theories and focus in on a very small group of people that are more likely to have done it, and examine that, and because we're missing, unfortunately, a tremendous amount of details, information. We don't have the police records on things that we wish we had. We don't have the interviews we wish had been done. Maybe they didn't even do them. Maybe they just screwed up. Didn't go there.
We don't have anything. We don't have anything.
We don't. So I'm okay with your concept that it could be Cohen, it could be Hutchinson. I like Hutchinson better. But I still don't think you go to the police. That's my. You have a problem with the escalation. I mean, you have a problem with him killing her for another reason, being a stalker, and then doing so much to her. My problem is him going to the police and being so fancy. So we both have issues with different aspects of it, but that's good. I mean, I think it's cool. So this has been fabulous, Joe. I've had such fun talking.
Absolutely.
And I haven't even had a chance to look into the chat room to see all the coolest comments.
No, I'm going to go back and look at them now myself. Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so many. Look at this. You're very interesting, says Benny. Oh, Benny, we're coming.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to everyone in the chat. Yeah, I appreciate it. Oh my God.
I mean, there's so many comments now. I feel like I should look. Oh my goodness gracious. But anyway. But I'm so glad to hear. We're going to go back. I'm going to go back over a lot of the comments. So stay in the chat so we can then have you comment back in the chat.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. This has been great, Joe. I'm going to see you in a year. I'll be there.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, we'll get it solved. Don't worry about that.
I'll be there in a year. I will. Okay, talk to you next time. Great. Bye.
Take care of yourselves.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
That was superb. Okay, that was Joe. He was absolutely amazing. While I'm waiting for Benny to call in. Benny, I'm waiting for you to call in now. Let's see. Lisa S says, in a syphilitic frenzy. Pat, I don't know if missing the throat of Mary Kelly would result in her entire face being removed, being chopped off and off. I don't even quite understand that, but she's whatever the person did. I don't know what a syphilitic frenzy. Oh, here comes Benny! Yay! Okay, all right. Benny, are you there? Benny?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. So that's great. I know we ran over a weekend. Okay. Sorry about that, but Joe had to get in the George Hutchinson thing, which was really interesting. I thought it was good. So I'm going to look.
I'll be touching on that too.
Oh, awesome! This is great. This is absolutely super fun. Because Joe always has very rational reasons for what the things he thinks, and he's been looking. He's obviously kind of a ripperologist, and so which I'm not, and he really is, and so that's his neck of the woods. So I am going to go there in a year, and Joe and I are going to go look for Rumble. What's his name? Rumble. We're going to buy him a drink, and we're all going to commiserate on how we all did our best but got screwed. But
yeah.
So anyway, here we are with Benny from Denmark. So
yeah.
That's awesome.
Maybe I should pre-text this call in so that people so that I can get people on the same page as I am. First of all, thank you and hello, Pat, and wonderful patrons. And thank you, Joe, for your insights, your very insightful thoughts, and you've done a lot of research on this, much more than me, for sure. Ooh. And excuse my poor, broken English and heavy Danish accent. Maybe later in the show I'll try some British accent, just for the amusement of Joe and other British patrons.
You do know your English is way better than our Danish, you know what I mean?
Sometimes I practice.
And that's all I can say. And it's probably wrong.
Yeah, your Danish accent is better than my British or my American.
But I did get brown bread when I went to the bakery, so I guess it was.
Yeah.
Something.
So I'll do some British accent maybe, just for the amusement of the British viewers, because my brother-in-law, he lives in Luton, so I visit him often there. I was outside the British there. Yeah, let me say this, Pat. I'm merely an amateur with all the research out there spending their life. In this case, I feel quite inadequate to be in this call-in. As you recall, I was quite reluctant to participate.
I disagree entirely, Benny. As I pointed out, I have found I have a lot of intelligent people here in my chat rooms and as my patrons, and that's why I've made sure that my chat rooms are for patrons only, so I don't get ludicrous crap. And and if you think you're not ludicrous and you're intelligent, join Patreon below and join our chat rooms, because all my I'll say again, all my videos are for the public. You can just subscribe to the channel. You can join every one of the videos. You don't have to pay a cent. But if you'd like to be with this great group in the community, my Patreon community, where I believe intelligent people live, join in. But no, Benny, I've always thought you were very, very, very wise. I thought you were very analytical, and that's why and I was, quite frankly, was a little surprised because you're the one who messed up my whole plan. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Because here's my plan, folks. Here's my plan. I was going to have before my video call-in, where everybody could come on with their ideas of who Jack the Ripper was. Then I was going to do my surprise video on who Jack the Ripper was. Then I was going to do my after. And Benny comes in and he goes, "Oh, I think it's Jacob Levy." I'm like, dang it, that's my video.
Yeah.
So you, Benny, changed my hook. I'm like, okay, maybe I better just do the video first and then I'll have the after part, because I'm like, get a pretty wind out of my sails, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to be sure I did my video on it. But I was really surprised because Jacob Levy has not been a popular suspect ever. And what I try to point out to people is when I was brought into the Mystery Files in 2010, National Geographic, they came to me and they wanted me to do the show. And they wanted me to support Rumble Lowe. He was the Jack the Ripper tour guide and ripperologist. He had a suspect of a guy who was the owner of this boarding house. And I just couldn't go with it. So I told them, I just can't profile this guy as that guy. Sorry. And so they sort of dumped Rumble and brought me in as the main profiler. And then I came up, I said, it's Jacob Levy. Now, some people will comment that I never gave my sources during that show. I don't. This is television. I don't have any control over what they put on the screen. And so many times they put misinformation on the screen. They edit the crap out of me. But what I told them was I used the case files, casebook.org. That's what it's called. Casebook.org. And Casebook.org is this incredible ripperologist site which has everything you'd ever want to know about Jack the Ripper. Every suspect, every victim, every theory, everything. I went there, but I could not say that during the show. Also, this is my number one book on the book on it, which is this Jack the Ripper book by Philip Sugden. I read that book. And at a certain point, I made a determination after reading all of this that I believe Jacob Levy was Jack the Ripper. Or, let me put it this way, the best suspect, because we're never going to know. He was my best suspect. So I did the show. And that's where it ended for me. It wasn't popular suspect because he wasn't very interesting. So after I did the show, I never saw much about it. Nobody came back and said, "Oh my God, that was so good." Pat Brown, you're right. Nobody said anything. And unless you were actually sitting on the casebook.org chat boards, I never saw anything. So this year, when I was going to go do my show, I was surprised to find out that a woman named Tracy had written a book in 2020, and she had a YouTube interview about how she believed Jacob Levy was the guy, and she was like the first person that came up with him as a top suspect, and I was like, that's interesting. Really? Okay. And she wrote a book, and I looked in her book to see, whether there was anything in the bibliography or in the footnotes that might have mentioned that I'd done the show on it in 2010, and there was nothing. So I was kind of surprised. So this whole plan I had of just presenting my theories was kind of just thrown because, I was surprised anybody else had even talked about Jacob Levy. So when you said that, Benny, I was like, what? Where'd that come from? But I thought,
Yeah, but we did some investigation, right? We did some detective work.
You did. No, you did. Benny, guys, Benny is really smart. Benny did some investigation work I didn't know even occurred. So, Benny, tell us about it, because this was fascinating to me. I was like, wow. Where's Benny go? Benny?
I'm still here.
Oh, so Benny, you did some investigation work, which I thought was really interesting. I actually took some photos because when you sent me the link, I was really surprised. So here was a link. This is Tracy Ianson. She's the one that wrote the 2020 book, which I think is okay. There's nothing wrong with her book. She calls it Jacob the Ripper. It's a good book because she did a tremendous amount of studies about why she believes Jacob Levy is the guy. She did a lot of background work on all his addresses and everything. It's amazing. So she says, this is in 2010 of August. Now, mind you, the show came out February of 2010. She says, hi all, for a while now, my suspect has been Jacob Levy. And while he is not a new suspect, for me, he's a very underrated one. Well, and then she gives some of her reasonings, which is this is 6 months after the show came out. And I'm thinking, well, we have independent thought. There's nothing wrong with independent thought. Then there was this interesting comment. Somebody said, Tracy, I just saw this. I thought it was presented well. That's the mystery files. This is in 2003. What, if you don't mind, are the issues you had with the program? And she writes, lots of laughs. So did you ever manage to watch this? How? I don't want to spoil it for everyone. When we first thought of Jacob as a suspect, we thought this was spot on. Really? Thank you, Tracy. But now there are a few things we actually disagree with her on. Okay, that's that. The her is me. So then I saw this, which I thought was interesting. This was presented in 2013. So she says, sorry about the delay in answering. Dad, I don't know who Dad is. I don't think it's her dad. Has covered some of the reasons on the other Pat Brown thread, which I didn't know existed. To add to that, it was presented well, but it seemed impersonal. Well, that's just TV, folks. Gosh, the information she seemed to have on Jacob was so basic and generic. Although her entire profile of Jacob as being the Ripper is my profile in her book, so I'm not sure how generic it was. Anyway, We have more knowledge, which I believe may have even been on the boards at the time. Okay. Also, some basic faults. That's TV. That's not me. Then she goes on about more of it. But it's just fascinating, Benny, because I did not know this. And when I saw her, when I read her book and I saw this interview, I'm like, that's my profile. And I'm like, she must have seen she must have seen Mystery Files. And I'm okay with her, going further with it. I'm okay with her book. It's got lots of great stuff that I will never do. All that, she's a ripperologist. And this is something I want to point out, Benny, about ripperology and about communities. I have not an objection for her coming up with Jacob Levy and being a ripperologist and going further with it. What I objected to is the fact that she obviously did see the Mystery Files before she came up with her concepts, before she wrote about it, and she never mentioned it in her book or in her bibliography or footnotes, which is academically incorrect. You don't do that. That's unethical. But so the funny thing about this is that I want to point out about communities. Ripperologists have these very strong communities which they spend a tremendous amount of time researching, and they're very, very kind of like, what do you want to call it, protective of the community. And then this stupid profiler comes in, does a TV thing, and they're like annoyed by it because you're not a ripperologist. And the same thing happened when I did the Cleopatra book. I did a Discovery Channel thing on Cleopatra. The historians and the Egyptologists were really pissed that a profiler said these things. Now, they took my stuff and then presented it as their own and left me out of the footnotes again. But they didn't like it that an outsider did this kind of thing. And here we have this problem with academia and with even the internet and with communities. We all see things in different ways. And sometimes what happens is it's useful to have a person coming from the outside to analyze things because they're not so entrenched in what is going on. And then we can marry the two. There's nothing wrong with marrying the two. I love historians and Egyptologists, but I came from outside as a profiler, seeing things in a way they hadn't seen in 2,000 years because they just were so stuck in their ways of thinking. But believe me, I read every book they wrote, and that's how I came to my conclusions. And that's why all that's in my footnotes and the bibliography, because they helped me be able to analyze the crime. Yeah. And so I totally credit them for that. And for Jack the Ripper, I'm not a ripperologist. And believe me, I got a lot of my information from ripperologists to then profile the crime. So it's nothing wrong with going vice versa or including everyone. And it's just sad when I think that, there's that kind of, blockage. But Benny, you came up with this, and it was surprising to me because I just didn't know. And it was, you do really good research. So you came up, I think you also, I want to tell people the truth here. You came up with the concept that Jacob Levy, you believed, was the best suspect, but that was without my information, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, let me just be honest.
So go ahead, tell me how you came up with it, because again, there's nothing wrong with independent thinking.
Well, I'll disappoint you in many ways because I'm stealing with my arms and legs, and I'm cheating all the time, as you were talking about just before. So prepare to be disappointed. I spent less time with
Benny. I'm never disappointed in you. I haven't been disappointed yet.
But the Jack the Ripper case is not really my big interest in I've spent more time on the Madeleine McCann case. It's just a lot.
Jack the Ripper Benny, Jack the Ripper isn't my big case either. So, I was brought into it by Mystery Files. Otherwise, I probably would have ignored it forever because, it's just, I don't live in the UK. It's not like really close to me. I was brought into it. So, you're in Denmark.
But of course, it's because everybody knows about it. It has some interest in that way, but profiling it, I don't think it's really that interesting. So I would just like to say that I am approaching this as a profiling the suspects, because I'm part of this educational channel of Pat Brown, teaches us to profile suspects. So I'll try to be explaining how I would approach the case if I was to look for a suspect from what you taught us here. So this is like a trial case. How would I do this?
Okay.
Well, and first of all, I don't pretend to be an expert on the case of Jack the Ripper. Well, sometimes if I have a little whiskey, I might pretend to be an expert, but I didn't have whiskey now.
Hey, wait a minute. Now, if people have questions what's actually in this cup, but I can't see you on the other end, so I don't know I don't know if you have a cup or
It's coffee right now.
coffee. What? You're trying to stay awake? This is only 10 o'clock, 10:30.
Yeah. And also, I want to point out, I think you agree that the case with Jack the Ripper is being romanticized by people. Like, just like the Titanic stuff, right? So it's like it's being portrayed in such a perfect and entertaining way.
Wait, I'm having trouble. I gotta hear you. Wait a minute, Benny. I'm having trouble hearing you clearly. I'm gonna speak again.
The case.
You said it was romanticized.
Yeah, the case was. It was romanticized, or no, it's being made into a myth because it's made more of a myth than a case. So it has to be, it's like a feather becoming fried chicken, like we say in Denmark. It's being saturated and everything is being analyzed to the extreme. So it's been I don't know any other word than romanticized. It's been like it's like a fairy tale story of the Jack the Ripper. So it's not really like profiling the way we would profile it. So that's the problem I have with it.
I have to comment on this point, Benny, because it's correct. What happens with cases that have gone cold forever and ever? When you talk about romanticize, I think that the popular term these days is rabbit hole. that instead of focusing on the very basic information and what's clearly obvious or what's known, then everything can be brought in. Like every speculation can be brought in, and then you start going, creating a drama, and you go down a rabbit hole, and so it is romanticized. It's like making it into something way farther and out of the world than it actually is. So I think that's romanticizing is a good term.
Yeah, it's like if you make a movie out of a case, the movie is going to be a lot more compelling and entertaining than the actual case was normally.
Yes.
So I think that's the same with the Jack the Ripper case, and it's like there's like a religion-like aura account around this case with all these people. And I'm backing off. I don't want to be caught being ridiculed for my views. So I'm like backing off for the case and just watch the movies and then say, okay, we don't know who Jack the Ripper is.
And we see
but
that.
I like to
we see that, Benny. We see that in the U.S. with the Black Dahlia case has been crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Charles Lindbergh, crazy stuff. All because again, it's been romanticized. It's like every theory is on the table. Everything can be explored, and everything can be made into a book or a movie, and that's where the money comes in.
Yeah. And also, I think you would be agreeing with this point. I hope you will, because try to compare the case with Jack the Ripper to the amount of myth that would have been built around Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, if he was not caught. Think of all the myth that would have been built around his crimes, because how shrewd he must have been to go under the radar. So the most prolific killer in the history of USA, 49 killings, and he planted false evidence beside his victims in the Green River area where he disposed of them. But because he was caught and he was just an average Joe, he was so average nobody expected him. He had a speech impediment. He was stuttering, and his IQ was really low.
On top of that, Benny, there's claims
that
he committed way farther more crimes than he ever committed. And the reason that's done, there's two reasons why that happens. One is that you can close a lot of cases if you can claim a lot of cases. So it's like, oh, he says he did Jane Doe. Okay, well, throw that one in. We close that case. And the second thing that happens is after you've struggled to catch a guy for years and you find out he's this idiot, you look stupid as a police detective if you couldn't catch the idiot. So you try to build him up to be more brilliant than he could possibly be. Same thing was true for the BTK case. Dennis Rader. Again, you have to check on my Dennis Rader thing. I do not believe he's the original BTK. I believe he's a copycat. But they built him. They spent 30 years trying to find him. And when this guy, Dennis Rader, screwed up, they're like, oh, it's like, he's a dog catcher. He's a dog catcher. How could you not catch a dog catcher? So you have to make him to be very clever, because otherwise you look like an idiot because you couldn't catch him. So. Yeah,
but that's actually the point, because if he wasn't caught, he would be made into a myth like this very shrewd person. But his IQ was 82. He was borderline mental functioning. So the most prolific killer in the USA had a low IQ, so he was not true. So he's not been made into a myth because he was just an average Joe. He was not interesting. Right. But if it was some interesting person that was never caught,
right. And why do you think Jacob Levy was never considered a good suspect for so long?
Yeah, exactly. That's actually the point here. So first, just to touch on Hutchinson, I have deep respect for Joe's views, and I think they were brilliant, and he added a lot more than I ever knew. But I would say this. Okay, I don't think that Hutchinson is Jack the Ripper. First of all,
and why is that?
Hutchinson, right? Okay, Hutchinson. He stalked this victim, Mary Jane Kelly. We all agree on that. He knew her. He had a personal interest in her. Now, let's say she was the first victim of Jack the Ripper. I would have said, okay, he could have been a suspect for the rest of the killings. But Hutchinson did not know or stalk the other victims. And the other victims were of a different age. Mary Jane Kelly seems like a personal vendetta for Hutchinson.
How old?
The other victim seems like...
I've forgotten, Benny. How old is Mary Jane Kelly? How old was Mary Kelly?
She was 25.
Oh, for some reason I blocked that out of my head. She was like hot compared to the other ones.
Yeah. So it's a completely different victim. So
I missed that completely, but I don't know why. Maybe I did this show so long ago in 2010, and I wasn't really willing to do like hundreds of hours of review of everything. I may at the time have realized she was younger, but I didn't remember it. But that's really interesting because that would put her in a totally different victim category.
That's one of the reasons why I'm saying that I don't think because this seems like a personal vendetta, something like a race against this person, and he was a stalker of this person. He knew Mary Jane Kelly. I don't think Hutchinson knew the other victims. I don't think that there was the same sexual interest in the other victims. So I don't see I don't see the same pattern there. And also, it seems like Jack the Ripper, he was not really interested in the mutilation. I think he was interested in stealing the utensils and investigating where is the uterus? It's here. Okay, so I'll grab this, whatever he wanted to do with it. But Mary Jane Kelly seems like this is just a massive, rage against her. It's not, hey, I'm gonna steal your uterus, something like that. So it seems like a different. Also, the way that Jack the Killer killed his victim. I don't know if you agree that he strangled them first. Some say he did that so the blood wouldn't splash out the same way. But I don't know. But he was skilled with the knife. So when he killed them, he quickly killed them with not just one cut but several cuts, completely through the throat, right? Just like you got a pig or you kill an animal. So it was like more a trade of a butcher. And Hutchinson, if you killed Mary Jane Kelly, he killed her in another way. It was another way. You had laid her clothes.
The doctor actually said he didn't believe the guy who killed her had any skills at all. And the guy who killed the other women definitely had, I think, basic butchering skills. I agree with you entirely. That's my point about Hutchinson. Jack the Ripper was never interested in anything above the waist. I was always interested in the internal organs below the waist. And you talk about the strangulation as opposed to they just cut. I think that when you're talking about the way animals are a lot of times killed, is sometimes a method of stunning before they cut. I personally believe that he sleeper holded them because here he's behind. A lot of these women, again, you pay them a couple pence. Oftentimes you're behind the ladies and not like having a whole romantic episode with them, right? It's a quickie thing, So getting behind the women are not adverse to having men go behind them, which is the easiest way to then sleeper hold them, which knocks them out. And then you can cut their throats and they're not going to be fighting you. And you can also have them facing a wall, or going down, whatever keeps the blood off of you to a great extent. Then once you've done that, you flip them over and do what you want. He did this in such a short period of time. His interest was not in rape. It wasn't a sexual assault. It didn't seem personal. It seemed all about knock them out, get them under control.
Completely agree.
And take their body parts out of the lower part.
But
Yeah.
But if you reverse the victim order, let's say Mary Jane Kelly was the first, and it was actually Hutchinson. Maybe I could agree that he got a taste for it and he started killing. But I think still he would mutilate more than what Jack the Ripper.
I would think so. I think people think that there's an escalation. Like he just did all the similar things to all the women, and then he suddenly went, because he was inside. He had all this extra time, which I don't think personally. I don't think Jack the Ripper goes inside anybody's home. I think he's uncomfortable with that because that's why he's always in the alley, because it's a 5-minute alley job. I don't believe he has the ability to speak to a lady to go to her home. And if George Hutchinson saw him, it certainly didn't look like some sleazy low-life guy. You know what I mean? It was this gentlemanish guy. I mean, I don't believe he went to her house.
You pointed something out, Pat, in the National Geographic show. You pointed out that on the chair in the Mary Jane Kelly chamber, her clothes was nice, neatly laid on the chair. So she knew the one coming in, the killer. She knew him. So yeah.
I didn't remember I said that, Benny. I haven't seen the show since I've done it. I don't remember what I actually said.
It's a good show.
I should watch the show, I guess. That would help. I haven't watched the show since then. But, if she's folding her clothes, this is not the usual Jack the Ripper thing. He wouldn't have even given her the chance to remove them because he doesn't have the ability to have a relationship with that lady. He's not smooth and charming. I don't believe that for a minute, because he wouldn't be getting these like frumpy middle-aged women in alleys. He would be, that I just don't buy that. So if she took her clothes off, that she knows who it is. I've always found Hutchinson to be a big fat liar and to be likely the killer of Kelly, but not Jack the Ripper. So you point out some really great stuff. But see, you said, I don't know what I have to add to the show. You just did. Brilliant. Really great.
I don't know. I know nothing. I'm just running off my brain now. But
your brain works well.
Okay, let's just say, how come I have Jacob Levy as my main suspect? Let's just say I have two main suspects, but one is better than the other.
Okay.
Jacob is better than Charles Alan Lechmere. I don't know if I pronounced it.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because he's never been on my radar. But
just basically that he was living in the area of Whitechapel, and I saw this documentary that Swedish with all this did, and he pointed to a lot of things that really stood out. Like, this could be the guy, because he was a meat car driver, so he was working in the area.
The meat car driver dude,
yeah. That's the dude. But he, I'll just say that what sets him apart from Jacob Levy is he had no, as far as I know, no knowledge of anatomy. How do you say that?
Anatomy and how to
anatomy. And he was not skilled with a knife, right? Why would he? Maybe he was. He was a meat car driver. Maybe he was cutting up some meat or something, but he was not a skilled killer like a butcher would.
I've cut up a few pieces of meat in my lifetime, but I don't know that I would be really particularly good with a human body. Cut off people's legs and arms, maybe, but.
But I think that Lechmere is really a good suspect, but I think that he lacks something that Jacob Levy has. So Levy has more, we can put a check mark on Jacob Levy. There's a couple of missing Lechmere. But again. So how did I come across Jacob Levy as my main suspect, you ask? To be honest, I can't remember because it's been around 5 years ago since I looked into the Ripper case, and I was not really looking very much, but I was researching, or maybe I was watching the YouTube videos and reading online debate forums. I don't remember, but I think I came across him. Maybe I saw your National Geographic show, and I remembered that he was a local butcher. I actually didn't remember the name Jacob Levy. I remember Jacob and the local butcher. So when you had the call in with Joe, not this one, but the one some weeks ago when you discussed, I chatted. It was a local butcher, and you said, "Oh, really, Betty? Is it? That's my theory." Okay, so I knew. Okay, we were agreed to that.
Much, but okay.
But so it might have been from your show, or it might have been from the YouTube video I sent to you now that was done 5 years ago, where Jacob Levy was mentioned. I don't remember.
There was see what happened with Jacob Levy is that on the case, let me say it right, casebook.org files. That's where I saw all the different people offered as possible suspects. Jacob Levy was one of them. Wasn't a popular one, but he was there. I believe I checked out the show you were talking about, and again, they very nicely put all the many different suspects in a row, so you could analyze and say, hey, who do you think could it be? So Jacob Levy it's not that Jacob Levy hasn't been around. It's just that people have been leery of going there, because he's not a popular suspect. It doesn't make any money. When Mystery Files let me on to talk about Jacob Levy, I was quite surprised, actually, because I'm like, you don't want me to come up with somebody better, somebody more interesting? And I was shocked, actually, because I sent them my profile and they liked it and said, we want you to do the show. And I was surprised because he's not popular. I'm like, and guess what? It probably didn't do the show a lot of good because it wasn't a super
because they
popular
expected
show.
you to they expected that this show will be like a present and you will be unpacking it and then inside the present it'll be something marvelous, but it's not. It's just an average show.
The show tanked. I honestly believe it went off a cliff because even on the casebook.org, there were people who discussed it, but it was like it wasn't popular because it's just not cool enough. And so and it was kind of sad for me because when I did it, I was like really kind of excited because I'm like, this really makes sense to me. It's Jacob Levy. Not that it's saying it is, but as a top suspect. And I was kind of excited to do the show. And then I did the show. And, you just kind of want good feedback, you know what I mean? Because you did your research, you go out there, you put yourself out there. And then it's like, oh, nobody gives a crap. This sucks. And it went off the cliff. And it went off the cliff, and I didn't get any kind of notoriety or like, oh, Pat Brown came up with, I see her profiling, it makes sense. None of that happened. That was 2010. So, now it's 2022, and I'm like, I forgot about it. Quite frankly, I forgot about it.
But they did mention you in that, or no, the comments they mentioned.
No,
you.
that comment was made like 2 weeks ago. Check that out.
Oh, okay. No,
that's a new comment. He actually said he said the guy actually was like recently. I think he saw my show, and he went and mentioned the book that Tracy had written, and he mentioned both of them. I was like 2 weeks ago. So. Again, generally speaking, unpopular topic. Now, a suspect. But what I think is going to happen, and I don't fault Tracy for this part of it. I fault her for not crediting me for being the first one to push that he's a top suspect. That pisses me off because that's just, I say, it's not right. It's unethical. But she now has done all this research and has this new book out. And if that research help support the fact that Jacob Levy is Jack the Ripper, the best suspect anyway. We can't ever say he's the guy. We can't do that. The best suspect. Well, then she's added to something I think is a good thing to add to, because as a profiler, one thing I want to get rid of is what you say, the romantic suspect. I get tired of romantic suspects. I'm like, look, I know you want something really cool, but hey, in reality, it's not that guy. It's this loser over here. I want people to understand profiling. I want people to understand how criminals work. So if something can support Jacob Levy as being the best suspect, I'm all for that. I am. I think that's cool. I just wish people would be honest when they write their books. So just so very nice.
Yeah.
But other than that, and so her book can help. She did a tremendous amount of research. As I point out, I'm too lazy to do that crap. And she's gonna.
It's fine. It's okay. She just had to credit the idea because now we know for a fact, because of the detective work we did, that she knew about your show.
Benny, you did the detective work. I actually didn't. I just looked at it and said, "There's no way in God's earth she couldn't have seen this." Because what happened to me was that I didn't realize that. I didn't go back to the casebook thing and find her there. I'll tell you why that never happened. This is the problem with. So if you're going to do research in the future, let me show you my error. Okay, I put in profiler Pat Brown, Jacob Levy. I did not come up with the casebook thing at all.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I didn't come up with anything at all. And then later on, I went back and put in just. What did I put in? I put in Jack the Ripper, Jacob Levy, without my name. And lo and behold, on the second page, that was the mystery files that came up. So they didn't in the description put my name. So that's why when I searched for it, my name never came up with it. But I'm thinking, okay, so Tracy, you're writing a book. You're doing all your research. You may not have put in Pat Brown because maybe you didn't know who the hell I was, right? That's reasonable. Maybe you never saw the damn show.
Yeah.
So you put in, what would you put in? You put in Jack the Ripper and you put in Jacob Levy because you'd be checking everything about that suspect. And that show would have shown up and you would have clicked on it and you would have seen the mystery files and you would have seen me. So I knew at that point, she could not have not seen that show. But what I didn't know, which is what you discovered, was that she'd actually seen the show when it came out in 2010 before she went to the Jacob Levy thing. So I'm like, okay, so now you even know I was there in 2010. You saw the show. That should have just been in your bibliography. That's all I'm saying. You should have simply said, Pat Brown was the first one to come forth and say, Jacob Levy is the best suspect. He's always been around. We've always questioned it. But she came forth in Mystery Files and said, this is the profile as put... and then she could have gone on and said, I agree with that, and here's why, and I'm going to do more research to prove it. And it's all cool.
Exactly.
But you did great research because I did not catch that one in the casebook files. And it's just a funny thing. It's just. I mean, I know people say, well, you're just like being a bitchy about it, but it's a frustrating thing in the world of academia.
I can relate. Yeah, I understand you very well because I would also have been credited. I would like to have been credited if I came up with the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna believe me. I never got any money off of it.
No.
The thing is, they pay you so badly for television, and I didn't write a book, and so you don't get paid well for this thing. So at least you think, for all the work I put out, could you at least just put a footnote in?
Yeah.
Give me a little something, you know what I mean? It's
but you're right.
Yeah, that's the way the world works.
Okay, so maybe I should present for the class here the patrons how a student of Pat Brown's profiling school would present my essay for profiling Jack the Ripper. I would say first of all, let's
go.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, we point to a time in history. Okay, this is 1888. Okay, there's no modern technology. We already discussed it with Joe. Surveillance cameras, no DNA, etc. Only police reports and reports from eyewitnesses, etc. And then we have location is London, it's Whitechapel, it's a poor area. And when back then, 5 years ago, when I looked at a list of suspects, I don't even remember half of them, but I ruled out 80% of them right away. Why? Because the fact that it happened in this area, circling close proximity of the Whitechapel area, you had to be a fellow living there because you had to be some person familiar with the territory. It would be somebody who was living there, working there, having his normal path of walking around there.
I just want to jump in. Just one thing I want to say. Think about two things, and you pointed out exactly. When people come up with fancy people going there, this is a scuzzy area. Can you imagine the worst, sleaziest area of your town and having anybody with any money wanting to go there? It's not happening. So it's just nobody wants to go there who doesn't actually have to go there. So your point that they have to live there is because they have to actually live there.
Actually, yeah, and there's one big reason. Also, another big reason has to be a familiar face because nobody would suspect him. So he had to be a familiar face. Excellent. And the fact that there was an area of poor people, he had to be a person of same social status. He had to be a person who was known to be roaming around and out also without getting any attention. He must be dressed and groomed the same way as people in the area. So he would also carry around a knife, or maybe it was hidden away. I don't know, but without anybody thinking it was suspicious. Hence, a local butcher would fit the bill here. He would also have basic knowledge about anatomy. I think I said
you got it right. Anatomy.
And basic knowledge about how to quickly kill without the victim making a sound, because they never made a sound. And who? I mean, again, a butcher fits the bill. And maybe he knew from killing animals in the butcher shop. He'd been practiced on killing animals, maybe in the butcher shop, perhaps. I don't know. But he had the skills and he had the practice. And he would be at least, now we're talking about the profiling of the person, he would be, I would say, at least in his early 30s, at least, because why would let's say, if he was 20 years old, why would he go for middle-aged prostitutes? He would prefer them younger. And also the prostitutes, if they were being approached.
Wait, Benny, are you saying that 20-year-olds don't prefer me for a date?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying back in London in 1888, the poor British guys, they would not prefer these elderly. What we are talking about, you said yourself, they were probably not attractive. We're going
totally
getting
agree.
into
No,
that.
that's absolutely. Yeah. There's two reasons there. One is it's true. When you're a young person, generally speaking, you're going to also look for younger people. There is a point in serial homicide where a teenage boy will kill an elderly woman who lives next door simply because he wants to kill and he doesn't have a car, so he can't go very far. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, if you have a 20, 30-year-old person killing, they want something that's a prize, and that's going to be a more attractive 20, 30-year-old woman. They're not really going to pick a 40 or 50-year-old frumpy woman. That makes no sense, except that he is also more toward that age group, and he also has not very much money to offer. So I love your profile on that. That's excellent.
But also the other way around, maybe the prostitutes would be more reluctant to go with somebody who looked like not legal of age, if it was something like.
I don't think they would object.
I don't know. That's why I'm thinking it must be somebody who is at least 30 and above. And also he would be, I think this is also important, he would be around the height of the man that Joseph Levy spotted talking to the woman prior to the murder of one. Right. So that's interesting that the height of both Chapman and Eddowes, and Chapman and Eddowes, they were exactly 5 feet tall. They were measured at 5 feet tall, just as Joseph Levy described. And this is important, which means his description of the height of the man he saw must be fairly accurate too, because if he could, measure just by the eyesight that these women were 5 feet tall, then he must be accurate, or fairly accurate when he says that the man he's talking to these girls
5'3", right?
5 inches,
5'3"
right?
Jacob?
So that was exactly the height of Jacob, which I think is actually, for me, that is like physical evidence right there.
Excellent.
So could it be a middle-class gentleman, a barrister, or someone else from the middle class upwards, like Prince Albert? Of course not. It could, like I said, I wrote it to you, like the obvious. Why would a gentleman, when in need of sex, go to a middle-aged, non-attractive prostitute whose hygiene and grooming would leave a lot to be desired? Plus, the teeth was like missing, a lot of them, and they would not smell very good as a living property and were alcoholics. No, a gentleman of the middle class, you would seek out more attractive, maybe younger prostitute, someone with all the teeth, lipstick, perfume. That alone does away with a great number of suspects. Yes. That's why I say that, because then you can wipe 80% of the suspects off the table right there.
That is absolutely brilliant, Benny, and I love that, because I don't think people understand how unappealing these women actually were. I mean, we're not talking about. They, as you point out, all those issues, and these women had children too, so they had bellies that were like not so great. So you're talking about not exactly the cream of the crop. So there's no reason why a gentleman, a person with more money, even if they're just going to kill the women, would choose to go into the cruddiest neighborhood and pick the cruddiest women. I mean, that's just the only reason you're going to do that is because you don't have a lot of choice. That's where you are, and that's the women you can get. Excellent.
Yeah, and of course, if you think about it, if it was some middle class man, people would have noticed that his attire was different.
What's that dude doing here?
Yeah, exactly, and they would have noticed. So he would stand out, but this guy, Jacob, he didn't stand out. So that leaves me with Charles Allen Lechmere and Jacob Levy. And as I said, Jacob fits more than Lechmere because he had a basic knowledge about anatomy, and he was skilled use of the sharp knife. Also, the evidence that Jacob had syphilis, and therefore he had psychosis and heard voices. He was institutionalized in a asylum in 1890 because of insanity. That points to him. He lived and worked in the heart of Ripper territory. He lived close to where Eddowes was murdered, where he was fleeing the scene, and he threw the apron. It was in the way where he lived actually. Again. Jacob was exactly 5 foot 3 inches in height. So Jacob fits the bill. That's what, of all the suspects on the table, he's the one that fits the bill, right? But it could, I don't know if it's him, but he's the best suspect.
Benny, that is a fabulous profile. Much more, I'm not, You might not, English may not be your first language, but you're much more articulate than me. And that was
No.
beautiful.
I'm stealing your profile.
Benny, I would hire you in a heartbeat for my agency. I think you're a great profiler, and I was super
That's just because we agree.
Oh my God! No, even if you didn't agree with me, the way you state everything is very accurate, and it's very. Your analytical skills are really good. And I saw that.
Well, I am a student of the Pat Brown profiling school, right?
I'm going to say, Benny, before you even knew who the hell I was, you're pretty good at what you did. And this is something I want to point out to people everywhere. Because when we talk about armchair profiling, it gets a bad name. And I sometimes give it a bad name because it's very annoying many times when this person is an armchair profiler, and they don't use the logic, they don't use analytical skills, they don't understand profiling, and they come up with the most ludicrous, like the rabbit hole theories, right? But I've always pointed out that just because a person didn't go through a training program with the FBI or with Scotland Yard or wherever is in their own country, doesn't mean they don't have the ability. And if I were hiring for an agency, the most important thing for me is logic. And the ability to be logical is so important. It's more important than anything else I can possibly think of. And what you pointed out, Benny, is you use logic. I mean, if you had done a show prior to 2010, like in 2009, and came up with all of this, then I would have to say in 2010, I listened to Benny, and I thought Benny was brilliant. I have to credit him because I listened to what he had to say, and it made a lot of sense to me. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to add to that. You'll be my footnotes in my bibliography because you're really good.
Well, thank you. But I can only say whatever was wise in that adolescence was from the school of Pat Brown. So, and I want to just point out something about the writing on the wall because I'm going to present.
Yeah, you were the one. You were going to say you didn't think that was Dr.
Yeah, and all appreciation for my profile will go down the drain now. But I don't care. I'm going to stick with my view now. Okay, listen. I'm gonna just spend 5 minutes explaining it.
Go for it.
There's a lot of things.
Okay, folks.
Okay.
This is the.
I'm going to say this right off. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really think the writing on the wall is done by Jack, as I can't think of one single good motive to write something like that. Okay, and that's going to be a lot now. Maybe he was, quite insane, and of course, hence there would be no real good reason to write it anyway. But so he could have done it. But I think it was done by somebody else prior to the murder, and has nothing to do with the case whatsoever. If we read the lines, the Jews spelled in
weird
the wrong way.
Other man, spell for shit, crap.
Yeah. Other man that will not be blamed for nothing. Bloody apron was indicated that he was done with the kill. The bloody apron that they found some 5 minutes walk away from
nearby.
Leaving the bloody apron seems to me he was in a hurry. He threw it away. He was in a hurry to get away from the crime scene. Why waste time on writing something on the wall? Think about the scenario and the timeline. The 10-minute window between the sighting of Catherine Eddowes talking to the man and P.C. Watkins' discovery of her body left Jack the Ripper with little time, only 10 minutes to make his move. In just 10 minutes, he would have to intercept Eddowes, commit the extensive and complicated injuries, make his getaway, all without being seen or heard. And then 10-minute window between the sighting of Catherine Eddowes and talking to the man and the discovery of the body left Jack the Ripper with very little time to make his move in just 10 minutes, right? So all these things he had to do. So knowing he was on the edge of being caught, because an hour before he killed Mrs. Stride, if we believe Jack the Ripper did that, right? An hour before, so you knew policemen were out looking for the perpetrator. So he killed Eddowes, and he thought he had time to go in to write something with a chalk on a wall, some racial stuff, some ethical stuff, on a piece of wall where he threw away the piece of bloody apron. Now, why would he write about Jews? I cannot think of a crime. His crimes were not related to race or ethnicity, so why write about Jews in the first place? He would be motivated by something else, and if he wanted to make a statement or a message, it would not be racial stuff. He would make something personal stuff or some sexual stuff. And his victims, they were not Jews, were they? So why would we connect that statement to him? And if you would like to make a significant message, you would probably have carved some letters into the body of others and the other victims, instead of using chalk on a wall some distance away from the body. And did he write any racial message on the wall by the other victims? Oh, he did not. Why not think that the writing on the wall was already there in the first place and was written by some boys who stole the chalk from the classroom, and obviously they could not really spell and had grammar problems? Would it not be a more reasonable approach? He was in a haste to get away, and yet decided it was worth to stop and write a bit of graffiti that wouldn't have been even noticed if it wasn't for the constable searching for the blood stains, right? So if he was intending to leave the signature next to a crime scene, you would think that he would do it next to the body, not 5 minutes away from the crime scene. Also, I would say that if he was the one writing that on the wall, and if Jack the Ripper killed Mary Jane Kelly, he would have ample time to write a message on the wall. He did not. He did not write any message there, even though it seems more personal and a more rage killing, right? Yeah. So I cannot see why this has to be connected to him at all. And actually, the entranceway where this apron was found and the message was written, it actually was occupied by approximately 90% immigrant Jews. So it stands to reason to believe that somebody there had some racial issues, and maybe some school kids were writing that on the wall. I cannot see why this racial thing has anything to do with Jack the Ripper. I don't see anything in his crimes that indicate anything racial. So, and there was even no evidence to show that graffiti was new. It couldn't have been there for weeks. So I'm saying it's a red herring.
Okay, I'm going to comment on this because, all right.
Yeah, I know.
All right. The one possibility is that he had come out of had been to the Jewish meeting, which was a kind of a social action
social
thing.
Club, yeah.
Right, social, but more of an action thing. You know, the Jews were getting together to say, hey, boys, everybody's treating us like crap. And so the theory being that he was angry that, you know, people were accusing Jews of things. So he actually meant to write, Jews are being accused of nothing for no reason. They're miswriting it, but the Jews are being accused of things for no reason. I've been accused of things. I suppose he stole some meat from another guy. I suppose he did this. I'm a Jew, so I did this, I did that. And he's angry, so he comes out of the club. He's already got that rage toward human beings in general, the general population being anti-Jewish. And therefore, after he kills the women, he's just, you know, he's on his way back. He's got chalk in his pocket, and he just scribbles it. Now, having said that, sometimes serial killers do really weird crap at really weird times that we just don't understand why they do it, just because I feel like it. It wouldn't take long to write that. It could have taken him 30 seconds. All right, let me point that out. Another thing about that would be, when I did Jack the Ripper show, during the actual show, Mystery Falls, it was being pushed over and over again. This is Jack the Ripper, and this is why he would have written this. And why would you think he would write this? And so I was giving an explanation as to why it could be Jack the Ripper actually writing that wasn't not the Jews. It was like Jews are being accused. It's just bad writing. That's why, you know, it was done. But I will say this, Betty. I'm in agreement with you, right? I think that is an excellent analysis, actually, too.
Had his victims been Jews, I could understand that there could be something.
Well, first of all, it doesn't have to write it next. Say serial killers don't necessarily write things next to their body. They don't necessarily write things every single time. That stuff is not true. I've seen serial killers just do weird crap. So I think he could have written it just because he was in that freaking mood when he's on home. He's pissed off and he felt like writing it. He could actually do it. So I would say he could. I think it could have been Jews aren't really responsible for all these things, so stop blaming me. I think it could have been miswritten or wiped off or whatever. So I think Jacob Levy could have written it, big anger against society. I could have written it because he's a nutcase anyway. So I think he could have. I do believe he had the time.
But don't you think, Pat, that then his killings would have been related to the issues he had with the Jews?
not necessarily. See, we're getting into the mind of the killer, and they're so screwed up to begin with. It's one of those things.
We're getting into Killing for Sports. I'm reading that book right now.
Right, Killing for Sport.
Just,
my book. It's a lot of hard times understanding why they do things. My favorite line in that book, Killing for Sport, is from a serial killer. I'm blanking on his name because I don't have the book here, but his explanation for why he killed a guy is he was apparently selling Christmas trees, and the guy comes up and says, "Well, that's a nice Christmas tree, so I killed him." what? You said it's a nice Christmas tree, so that was your reason for killing the dude? So, serial killers have a messed up mind. So I believe Jacob Levy could have written that saying you're pissed off at Jews, and so you're just blaming me for everything, for blaming me for nothing. You shouldn't be blaming me for nothing. He could have written it. It was near the bloody little apron thing. He would have chalk as person. However, I rather like your analysis a lot. I do, because you make some great points. One is, I do believe he killed Stride, although a lot of people don't. I think that was a screw up. It got interrupted, and he went on to the next one. I could point out, if that's true, he's already killed her. He's already got to know that the constables are rolling around now, and he's gotten to kill the second one. All he really wants to do is get the hell out of there and go home and hide.
Yeah.
So that he would bother to stop and write some bullshit on a wall is not as likely as him doing it. So I like what you're saying, that why would he bother at that point in time doing this? I mean, just maybe not, So is it possible that some other person wrote that because I wrote that, and he just came by, and it's one of those red herrings. You just dropped your crap near something somebody else did. It had nothing to do with you. I like it, Ben. I think it's reasonable. I know that during the show I was pressured into connecting it to Jack the Ripper. I haven't gotten any smarter since the show, but I think the point you made, which I think for some reason maybe it went over my head at the moment when I was thinking about things, because I was trying to point out the fact that he could have chalk because he's a butcher, that it was in an area where he clearly was at, and he had come out of the Jewish meeting. So there's a lot of reasons to believe he could write it. But I think I really like your point about him just not really, he's got places to go and get the hell out of Dodge. I just don't know that it's worth him. He could have stopped and written it because, again, serial killers do weird crap. But then again, was it just a red herring and he's just on his way rushing home and he dropped this one thing and it just happened to be near something somebody had written, and it's meaningless, totally meaningless. And I like it because the writing on the wall has never been really important to who did it. You know what I mean? Neither those silly letters that were sent that were definitely not Jack. Those were not important things. What was important?
I think that most people are assuming that Jacob the Ripper is a Jew because of that writing. And Jacob Levy just happens to be a Jew, but that's unrelated to the crimes.
Well, no, actually, a lot of people think it couldn't be a Jew because of that writing. Because if he wrote that, they were thinking it was anti-Jewish, and therefore he wasn't a Jew. My theory was that it's possible that because of the way he wrote it, he actually meant to write, "We're being blamed for nothing," not that we're not being blamed for nothing. So that therefore he was a Jew. But in reality, none of it mattered that he was a Jew to begin with, except for the only thing that made any sense to me was the location. Because coming out of that Jewish club, the social club, it was a vicinity where one of the people were murdered, one of the women were murdered. And serial killers tend to murder where they live, where they work, or what's in between the two places, or someplace they happen to be. So there was another point of my analysis where one of the victims was murdered near a hospital, and he had gone there for a check on syphilis. So he would have been near the hospital. So if I were, actually on the detective team and looking at all the locations, I'd be looking at geographical profiling in the sense that we don't tend to murder where we don't understand the area. I mean, I live in Maryland, and I know my area really well. I know where the police are at, where the constables would be at, you know what I mean? I know when things are quiet, when things are busy. The last thing I want to do is cross over the state line and go some town I don't know and have no clue what's going on over there, because I could get caught because I will go out doing stupid stuff in places that people are maybe see me. So I'm going to go where I know.
So you're saying, Pat, that the Delphi murders were done by a local guy?
The what? What?
The Delphi.
Oh, Delphi. Oh, yes.
By the reason.
Well, that was a jump.
Right? Yeah. Because, I just mentioned that because I think that Delphi murders are much more interesting than profiling Jack the Ripper.
Very good. So. Yeah, Delphi, in case you guys don't know it, 2 girls were murdered in a park. A very strange murder. And do I think the guy's local? Absolutely. I've never thought he was somebody passing through the area, because that whole location was something you had to be very familiar with. So absolutely, absolutely local dude. I mean, there are cases where like truck drivers will kill people, but usually they pick up like what is it called? What's the term for it? Darn. Okay, so maybe somebody in the chat room. I have been ignoring our chat room terribly. What are they called? The girls in the girls of the trucker stops. What are they called? There's a name given to them because they're prostitutes that hang out at trucker stops, and lounge. No, not lounge.
I don't know. I don't know what they're called, and I'm happy I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, well, good, but not hitchhikers. No, and truckers will pick up hitchhikers. So a trucker serial killer would pick up a hitchhiker, rape and murder her, and then dump her like 400 miles from where he picked her up. So hitchhikers can often be part of a trucker serial killer thing. No, I'm talking about the truck stop. I'm gonna because nobody's coming up with it. I'm gonna put this in. Truck stop prostitutes. There's a name for them. Truck stop prostitute.
While you do that, I can tell you that Joe Stunner has an interesting thought. He says, "I think that
it is lot lizards. It's called lot lizards." For those of you who are new to trucking, lot lizards are prostitutes who work in truck stops and rest areas. These men and women often solicit truckers over CB radio by offering services such as commercial company or 40, 60, 80, which means 40 for one thing, 60 for another thing, and 80 for both.
Interesting.
Just what you didn't need to know, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
But Joe says, just put in something in the...
Joe thinks... Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Joe thinks... Yeah. I think the Dear Boss letter might well have been written by Jack. The others are rubbish. Do you think so, Benny?
Yeah. I think the one that was the one with the liver, right? And that was the one with the first time that it was right after Edo's, and that was the first time that he signed Jack the Ripper. So I think they must have thought that was the one that was most authentic. I cannot. I haven't read all the letters they received, but that one seemed authentic. Would you agree, Joe?
I just never have thought Jack the Ripper would have the slightest bit of interest in writing the media. I think he's too much of a it's a lot lizard himself.
And maybe he was.
I see him as the shall we say what's the word for it? Communicative. He doesn't. His wife doesn't think he's communicative. Nobody thinks he's communicative. I don't see him suddenly writing letters. I mean, maybe that writing on the wall you don't think is his is kind of like, you know what I mean? Poorly written, just a scratch on the wall. I could buy that before I could buy any of the letters. Joe says the Dear Boss wasn't signed Jack the Ripper. It's unsigned. I still don't think he's that kind of guy. I don't think he cares what other people think. I think he's so into just his little misery. I don't see it. Oh, look, wait a minute. Joe says, I agree with Betty that the writing on the wall had nothing to do with the Ripper. Both pro and anti-Jewish graffiti was not uncommon in Whitechapel due to the large Jewish community. Hey, you got Joe on your side. Wait. I got to do a few more here. Lisa N says, I agree that Benny's analytical approach is top class. Ooh. We get nice compliments.
Well, I have my teacher in front of me. I have to deliver.
Yeah, Lisa is really into you. Let's see. Lisa also says, Joe, it's a really missed opportunity, I think, for Pat's profiling experience to be combined with someone who loved doing detailed original research. Could have been a winner. It could have been. That's true. Oh, here's Joe says, Whitechapel in the 1880s was an absolute hellhole. Over 50% of the children didn't make it past the age of 5. Wow. STDs are rampant, as was prostitution. Most adults didn't see 50. Hell on earth. Oh, that's disgusting. And apparently, Florence loves both of you guys. All right, I'm trying to go back just a little bit here. Because I ignored everybody here. So I'm feeling bad. But anyway, all right, wait a minute. Where was I at here? Let me go back to what you were saying. Sorry, interrupted. I'm one of those people. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think you made a good point about the letters. Actually, when I think about it, that why wouldn't the dear Boslet why wouldn't if he was writing the letters, why wouldn't it be something about the same thing that he was writing on the wall? And if he had something to say, why, I always think that he was at a state where he was not very educated. I think that he was not sane. So I think he would not be rationalized enough to think, I would write this letter to the police because I want to taunt them. I don't think his mindset was that. I think he was out. He wanted those. He wanted uterus, and I don't know what he wanted it for. I have a theory what he wanted them for, because he has syphilis, and he wanted. Maybe he was, this was a vengeance of, I'm gonna shoot women.
Right.
I can
I
kind
don't
of
see
agree
where
with his
taunting
thought.
the police has anything to do with a guy who wants to rip out the innards of women. I mean, those are two.
No. That's why. Yeah, there's a disconnect there. You're right.
Yeah. I don't like it. I mean, I say I'm okay with not believing the writing on the wall is his. But if he were going to write on the wall, at least that's at least something closer to what he might scrawl than writing a full letter to the police.
Yeah. And you see, when Joe is writing in the chat room, it just shows that he's a ripperologist, and I am nothing of the kind. Because he knows a lot about the letters the kid there. I just scratch the surface of the case and think, but he knows a lot of details, and I appreciate Joe the time and the effort you have done.
Goodness.
Researching the Jack the Ripper case. Oh, of course, it's a local thing for you.
Right.
UK, of course.
You don't have a Danish Copenhagen Cupidhowen Jack the Ripper rolling around.
No, we have famous cases in Denmark, but that's only I don't think anybody else than the Danish people know.
But Jack was kind of unusual, so I'll give him that. But across the world there are like amazing cases that we've never heard of because it's not popular in our country or in our language. So as time goes on, I always hope to uncover things, and I am, from all the people that tell me what cases I would like me to look at. I have found cases which I never knew existed. Like, wow, your country sucks too. Sorry about that. Yeah. Your country sucks too.
Pat, another time I would like to do a call in with you. Also, I have a list of. I want to revisit the Japanese toilet case sometime.
The toilet. You are okay. Wait a minute now. He's a ripperologist.
I have a tweak.
You're a toilet freak. You're like.
Yeah. This is the most interesting case I ever.
Anybody who doesn't know this case, because this has been a Benny's thing, because it is so bizarre. So anyway, if you don't know this case, go. Maybe I should put a link below to the Japanese toilet case. So anyway, this dude is a perfectly nice fellow, ends up underneath a toilet, not underneath the toilet inside the house, but it is actually under. He ends up going through, somehow getting outside and going underneath the toilet and getting stuck in there and dying underneath this toilet. Anyway, it is. Nobody can figure it out. It's so bizarre. So so you want to have a revisit to the Japanese toilet?
Yeah. And I got a list of things to talk about it to discuss with you. But that is one I got a tweak on it that I think fits it more.
Okay, because I it's one of those cases where nobody's really solved it, and as a profiler, I'm not going to solve it either. All I can say is there's certain things in that case which lead me to look away from certain things. Sometimes that's as far as you can get. You can say, 50% of this, that's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. This 50%, a little closer, you know. So we'll have the toilet revisit. So he's a toilet I can't even say it, toilerologist.
Yeah, the case is a bit of a crap case.
Yeah, it's one of the weirdest cases ever. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, wait a minute. Joe's coming back at you. I don't go with Leshmere as a leading suspect, though. And let's not forget that Ripper might be Mr. A and other.
Another, yeah. Right, Joe. That's good.
That's very funny.
That's a good one.
I like that. Then I was saying, let's say, Lisa S. is saying, let's say Levy is the best suspect. What would be his reason for sending body parts to the police? Wasn't he the one, in fact, communicated with the police? Well, we don't know that anybody communicated with the police that had anything to do with Jack the Ripper. And they supposedly didn't actually say that body part was part of the lady. So, and was it even human? Do you know that, Benny? I can't remember now. Was there's supposed to be some kidney
I think there were some that they are not sure.
Or was it medical?
But I think they were in doubt that it was even human.
Okay, because you know,
I think maybe it was from a pig.
And you could have it from if you're a medical lab, there's a lot of reasons you can get a kidney that doesn't require you getting it off the street. So, and what I'm just not buying it terribly much. But let's see, Joe said, Benny, you're like a lot of great points. I agree with you and Pat that Levi is a top 5 suspect. At least. Well, thanks, Joe. That's great. I love this group of people. I mean, y'all guys are great because I swear to God, the people I block off of YouTube are just obnoxious and silly. And you guys have great points, which even if you challenge what I say, are really interesting and very, they're really, it's good thinking. So I really like that. Let's see, Joe says, the piece of kidney sent to Lusk with a letter fit the missing piece from the Edo's corpse. Really? I don't know that I believe it. I don't know. I have problems with it. I'm gonna have to look into that, Joe. But I for some reason, I can't remember why. Never really worked for me. Anne says, if it's from a pig, it's not a kosher butcher. Thank you, Anne. Oh my God.
There's so many details in this case that I also forget. It's very hard to discuss them because you have to have the case in front of you. Right. All these details that I forget also.
It is. So when you get to these very, very difficult cases, I have people come onto YouTube. Pat, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I don't even remember this, and I don't really want to spend the next 2 hours researching it. It's like I had, maybe back in the day when I researched this and did it, I had an opinion, but. Some of it, unless you're very much entrenched in like ripperology for Jack the Ripper or any other case. I mean, I've seen people with the Delphi case. Holy crap. They got so much information from all around. And they're like, what do you think of this suspect? And I'm like, I've never heard of the dude. Probably because I don't listen to stupid YouTube channels that make up suspects that don't exist, and I'm not going to waste my time doing it. So it's a tricky thing. And, so if you can't remember something, I'm going to look up the kidney thing, though, Joe. I'll look it up. I don't remember that being something about that. I just remember that just didn't ring right to me. None of the letter just doesn't ring to me as the guy. I don't know. It's just, but that's up for argument, obviously. Totally up for argument. So, Benny, have you got some more commentary here that I've interrupted?
No. Not at all.
No.
I think I'm done.
Oh. I know. I hate to. I know what it's like to be. I've done TV and stuff so long enough to know. I'm on a roll, and then somebody has to give their opinion on my opinion, and I'm like, now I can't remember what the hell else I was going to say in this show. So now I'm screwed. So bye.
But I realized that if I'm in a call-in with you, the more I shove up, the more wise the call-in sounds.
Everybody loves you, Benny. I mean, let's see what Joe has to say. Everybody loves you. Joe says the beauty of the Ripper case is that literally everything all of us have said could be completely untrue.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a good point, Joe. We are discussing something, and it's exactly the point, Joe, because we're spending time profiling something that we will never know the answer of. So we're just guessing, but But this was my best guess from what I could read.
Well, I'm with you. I'm with you, Benny, on your best guess. I think it's great, and I tend to support your scroll on the wall theory too. I mean, I do. I think if I had to go with whether you're more right or I'm more right theoretically about Jacob scrolling something on the wall, I'm going to give you 70-30 on that. You know, I am. I kind of tend to go with what you're saying. I mean, as I said, I think I was asked about it over and over again, why he would have written this, and the closest I could come was they misinterpreted what was written, and it was written by chalk, and Butcher does have chalk, and so yes, it matches Jacob well enough. If it's going to be his writing, it matches Jacob more than anybody else. But I tend to more think that your conclusion may be better. That it just is a red herring, and it's just a waste of time. I'll give it great credit on that one. So, yeah, see, I told you you're coming here for a purpose. You know, you said what before. It's like, guys, just Benny says, what could I possibly add? You just gave a great analysis, very, very analytical and great analysis, and a good thought on the scrawled writing on the wall. So I'm just like very impressed, very super impressed. So, but you're right, Joe.
Stolen from all the ripperologists.
Hey, as we all do. I mean, we all have to get our information from somewhere. But you're right, Joe, too, that we must be talking crap, you know. And that's why we should all get together in a pub. We get some great beer, you know, and to just say, you know, got to have a sense of humor because none of this may be worth a damn.
Exactly.
But we're having fun as long as we have.
Yeah.
You know, some people ask me why I do so much stuff with humor, considering I'm talking about homicide and murder and I'm a profiler. But, you know, I honestly feel like I can't do these shows unless I can at least smile some part of it. If I have to do these, like, and then we're going to be talking about the next. That's it. I can't do it. I can't live my life that way. I have to have some level of. It's a terrible subject. It's true. Very sad things happen, and as a profiler, I'm very concerned about analyzing correctly. But man, I just gotta.
You have a healthy balance.
I do. I have to have a healthy balance. I have to have a little fun because if I don't have fun, I don't even know why I'd be doing this. You know, I don't torture myself every show. You know, now I want to have a little bit of levity and all of it. And but this has been great, Ben. I told you should come on. I thought both you and Joe have given so much. Wait, I have to see what Joe says here. You've just described exactly what all ripperologists do. By the way, Don King is definitely a psychopath. Sue me, Don.
Yeah.
That's absolutely great.
He's going to come after you now, Joe, with his legal team.
Yeah. You're in another country, so it's hard to sue.
He's going to send Mike Tyson after you.
Yeah, it's harder to sue in the UK than it is in the US, so I'm going to be a little bit more cagey about that. You know, so, yeah. So, but... Yeah, Don King. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. So anyway, thank you, Joe, for being here. You are fabulous. Thank you, Benny, for being here. You're fabulous too. You both have just added so much. It's been so fun. And I told you guys, you would just be great. And this is exactly what I wanted for my post Jack the Ripper thing, because you've all given such great analyses and great thoughts on all kinds of different issues. And again, we leave it to everybody to realize that we actually don't know crap. But we're happy to present our crap anyway.
Well, we're just pretending we know stuff.
Exactly. We want to be hey, you might as well be delusional because everybody else is going to tell you you're not so smart, but you might as well believe you are.
Exactly.
I'm going to get to Denmark and I'll share some Tuborg with you. So because Carlsberg.
Yeah. I'll be taking a bottle of rum now. I always say I'd rather have a free bottle in front of me than a prefrontal lobotomy.
That is so great.
I would just say thank you, Pat, for having me on. It's been a privilege, and thank you, Joe, for your.
Been great. Thank you both for being on here. You're awesome. See you next time we do a call.
See you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.